In April 2010, love and marriage were the last things on 19-year-old Rachel Harner's mind.
I didn't actually plan on getting married, ever. I'd just come out of a relationship that didn't really end well. I just knew that it was going to take a little bit of time before I was willing to invest myself again.
But while Rachel was flighty in love, the Georgia girl was rock solid in her commitment to everything else, especially her duties as a reservist in the U.S. Marine Corps.
I loved it. At the time that I was waiting to be deployed, I was working as a waitress and a bartender. I was very, very busy.
And Rachel was also hunting for a third job to help ends meet.
I've always loved animals, and I wanted to work at a pet store. So I printed out an application, I filled it out, and I walked in.
Rachel couldn't help but feel like a smitten kitten when she first laid eyes on the manager conducting her interview, Michael Parson.
I noticed him right away. I thought he was very handsome. He had beautiful, smooth skin and a very intoxicating voice.
Tell me about yourself.
During the course of the interview, I told him that I was a Marine, and he pulled out his dog tags.
Yeah, I was in the Navy Corps.
I just kind of thought, ka-ching.
Michael told Rachel he'd been deployed to Iraq and received a Purple Heart after an IED exploded.
Michael said that he went to Iraq twice, and he had injured his lower back. I liked his military background.
3 days later, Michael offered Rachel the job, which she accepted with every intention of keeping her little crush in check.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
But as the weeks passed, her feelings for Michael only grew.
Rachel would go on and on about Michael. It was a friendship that was definitely blossoming, and it was special to her.
After learning from coworkers that Michael was single, Rachel asked him out for lunch.
Michael was very surprised, but he said yes.
I'd love to. Yeah.
As the two chatted over barbecue, Michael mentioned he was 28, nearly 10 years Rachel's senior.
I was intimidated by the fact that he was older, smarter, and more mature. But I was attracted to him. When we left, he kissed me. At first, I kind of just wanted friendship, but I was interested in Michael in a more than friendly way. And so, inevitably, me and Michael became intimate.
By October of 2010, it became clear that Rachel and Michael were more than just friends with benefits.
When Rachel would start talking about Michael and her eyes would just kind of glaze over, you can tell there's no way she's letting him go.
For the first time, I could imagine growing old with somebody. And it hit me like a ton of bricks.
The couple did their best to see each other as often as their busy schedules would allow.
I was working 3 jobs. But for the most part, we spent a great deal of time with each other. And I would stay at his place, and he would stay at mine.
But when Rachel stayed at Michael's apartment, she couldn't help but notice something strange.
There was a lot of feminine products around. He had female shampoo and conditioner, brushes, and things that I wouldn't have expected. It didn't seem to fit because he was single.
This strange discovery was just the tip of the iceberg. And soon, Rachel would discover just how far and deep Michael's secrets actually went.
His whole life was a lie.
He's a monster. It's incomprehensible.
I was in shock. I refused to believe that Michael had done this. I did not know this man.
By October of 2010, Rachel Harner was head over heels for her new boyfriend, Michael Parson, but confused by the discovery of some feminine products in his home.
I wouldn't have expected a homegrown bachelor like him to have them. So I asked him, why do you have so much female stuff?
Any doubts Rachel might have had soon disappeared.
He informed me that his aunt, Adina, stayed with him while she was building a house in Atlanta.
This is her stuff.
And he showed me a photo, and I was like, wow, she is very beautiful. How old is she? And he said, late 40s. I understood. It's something that I would do for my family and vice versa.
But it wasn't always easy. Aunt Adina's visits forced Michael to sleep on the sofa.
He would complain the next day because his back would hurt from his injury. And I told him, just make her sleep on the futon. He's like, I'm not going to do that to my aunt.
But the pain in his back became so bad that Michael went for a scan of his spine and was given some horrible news.
Michael called me, and he said he had spinal cancer. We were both shocked. I felt like I had found this beautiful, wonderful treasure, and all of it was about to be taken away from me.
Michael told Rachel he would have to go through chemo and radiation to stand a fighting chance.
She was very interested in finding more about it. She got really into natural remedies, things that would help the nausea. She wanted to make sure he was eating right, sleeping right.
But Michael's scheduled treatments always seemed to coincide with Rachel's mandatory military events. And in May, this Georgia girl received orders to complete training at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina.
I was very upset about it because I really wanted to be there for Michael. I always just assumed it was bad timing.
Soon, Michael was too frail to continue working at the pet store and had to take a job working at home for a phone company instead.
Michael lost a lot of weight, and he would throw up so frequently and so violently that sometimes there would be blood. We were very frightened because nothing seemed to be working.
So when Michael told Rachel that his only hope was laser radiation surgery and that the top facility for the procedure was in South Carolina, Rachel didn't think twice.
The surgeries were incredibly expensive. I left my car with him when I was stationed at Camp Lejeune for my training. And I told him that he should sell it, and whatever he could get from it, he should use it on his surgery.
Rachel just wanted to be there for Michael, do anything and everything she could, just to help him through it.
I was determined not to let this beat us.
In May of 2011, Michael told Rachel he underwent surgery and things couldn't have gone better.
He would have to do it a couple more times, but for the most part, it had worked. I was so relieved.
And when Rachel learned that she would deploy to Afghanistan in 4 months, she knew their love could endure the distance.
I had no doubts. I had absolute 100% confidence in Michael.
Rachel even made Michael the main beneficiary of all her military assets.
He would receive all of the money I had in my accounts. I put all of my belongings in storage.
Where'd you get this from?
My friend asked me to hold on to his pistol. I had a lot of equipment, and I packed every worldly possession I owned, and Michael had the key.
But as July 4th approached, Michael wanted one more thing from Rachel.
Me, Michael, and my family were just hanging out. And Michael just pulled out a ring and said, Rachel, you're the most beautiful woman in the world.
Will you marry me?
I was like, of course. It was exactly what I wanted. I was ecstatic.
I could tell she was surprised. I really still felt that she was too young, but she was definitely happy.
Only one major hurdle stood between Rachel, Michael, and wedded bliss: deployment.
I was deploying to Afghanistan. I was very scared, but I believed in Michael, and I had faith in him.
Who could have known what a tragic mistake that would be? Especially when long-distance love turned into unimaginable lies.
He had this whole different life, and Rachel didn't have a clue.
Michael was able to manipulate people his entire life.
I had been betrayed and tricked. I felt all the blood drain from my face.
In the fall of 2011, After accepting her boyfriend Michael Parsons' wedding proposal, Rachel Harner was stationed in Afghanistan for 7 months.
The number one thing that made it easier to endure was Michael. And in the scariest moments of my time in Afghanistan, Michael was the one I was thinking of.
Even though Michael's cancer was officially in remission, Rachel still wished she could be there for him.
Rachel and Michael communicated in every way you could think of long distance, even though she was so far away.
I only had one opportunity to video chat Michael during my deployment. It's the first time I'd seen his face in 5 or 6 months, and I was very excited about it.
But Rachel's excitement quickly turned to shock.
As I was talking to him, a woman walked into his office. And she walked right up to him and just leaned forward and kissed him on the lips. I lost my mind. I said, "Who's this woman?" He said, "That's my aunt."
So you need someplace to stay.
And I was like, "She kissed you on the lips. That's not something your aunt does."
Michael tried to calm his fiancée down.
He was like, "That's just the way our family is."
We're just an affectionate family.
And after a little bit of arguing, I accepted his explanation. He told me all about her, and so I ended up apologizing to Michael.
It's all right.
And I said, I have insecurities because we've been away from each other for the past 5 months.
A few weeks later, Rachel received some exciting news. She would be returning to the States.
I was ecstatic. I felt like there was nothing that was going to stand in our way.
In April 2012, the couple finally reunited at Camp Lejeune.
Rachel and I got back from Afghanistan, and I just see Rachel run into Michael's arms. And there's just the look on her face of just pure joy.
The happy couple went to a nearby hotel room and spent 3 days catching up. After a few more days on the base, Rachel finally returned to Atlanta, and the two lovebirds went to dinner with her parents.
At the dinner table, they were just holding hands. He was feeding her bites of his food from his plate, just talking about how happy they were that she's home.
That night, the couple settled into another hotel, since Aunt Adina was in town once again. 4 days later, they parted ways.
I had to go back to Augusta because I was still on active duty. So I kissed him, and I told him I loved him and I was going to see him that weekend.
But around 10 o'clock that evening, Rachel was startled by a knock on her door.
I opened up the hotel room door, and it was the police. And they were like, "Rachel Harner?" I was like, "Yes, sir, that's me." He's like, "Do you know Michael Parson?" I was like, "Yes, sir. What's going on?"
I need you to come with us.
And what they said next was just the beginning of a nightmare that would consume Rachel's life for years to come.
All the lies that Michael had told her began to unravel.
What Michael did was sickening.
I did not believe what I was hearing. I just kept saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God."
If you have a story for Who the Bleep and would like to appear on the series, go to investigation.discovery.com. In April 2012, Rachel Harner was stunned to find police at her hotel room, asking about her fiancé, Michael Parson.
And they drove me to the police department, and they took me to an interrogation room. I was like, I don't know what's going on. All I know is I'm really freaked out right now.
Rachel could hardly believe her ears when investigators began questioning her about Michael's wife.
I was like, Michael can't be married. He's not. We're engaged. I was like, we're getting married in October. There's no way that he can be married.
And that's when police said the words that would change her life forever.
Michael Parson's wife was Adina Parson.
I was in shock. They showed me a picture of her, and I said, "That's his aunt." And he said, "No, that's his wife." They'd been married for a few years.
And And that was just the beginning of the lies.
We informed Rachel that Michael was 42, not 30 years old. He was married before Adina, and that he had a child living in South Carolina.
I felt all the blood drain from my face because I realized his cancer treatments were in South Carolina.
That's when police dropped yet another bombshell.
The hospital records showed that Michael had never received any type of treatment for any type of cancer whatsoever.
I refused to believe it, and I argued with him. I looked them right in the eye, and I said, he threw up in front of me, he was ill, he lost weight. I do not know how Michael lost all that weight or why he was sick.
But the harder Rachel tried to defend Michael's character, the more holes police poked in his stories.
Michael was in the military but never served overseas or in any type of combat situation. His injuries were from falling off of a roof.
I was confused and upset, and I was in complete and utter denial.
Police clearly had Rachel's attention, and next they delivered the most shocking blow of all.
On April 20th, Michael made a phone call to Adina to lure her out of their apartment complex. When Adina came out, he was there waiting for her to come outside. She was shot 2 to 3 times in the head, and then was shot 5 to 6 times across her body. We believe Michael planned this attack.
Police revealed Adina had survived, but was in critical condition.
Michael had shot his wife. And less than 24 hours later, he was in my arms after he had done such a horrible, horrible thing. I did not believe what I was hearing. I just kept saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then Detective McGinnis described the make model of the gun. And it happened to be the exact same gun that was in my storage unit, and Michael had the key. It finally hit me that Michael had committed this crime. I couldn't deny it anymore.
On May 5th, 2012, Michael Parson was found hiding out in Texas. He was arrested and extradited to Georgia. Michael was charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault and battery, and making false statements to the police.
Michael never admitted his guilt, but we believe Michael's motive in this shooting was so that he could go ahead and marry and spend the rest of his life with Rachel Hunter.
I don't believe necessarily that Michael did this as an act of love so much as an act of cold, calculating indifference.
He's a monster. I was full of rage. It's incomprehensible, and it disgusted us.
She had no idea that everything about him was a lie. What Michael did to her was sickening. It was just gruesome.
On May 20th, 2013, Michael Parson went to trial and pleaded not guilty, but his lies ultimately caught up with him. 3 days later, he was convicted of all charges. He received a 35-year prison sentence.
It doesn't undo the damage that's been done. There's been justice, but everybody who has been touched by Michael Parson has been irrevocably damaged.
Today, Rachel is still bothered by the clues she overlooked.
The single most thing that I regret is not saying, you know what, I'd like to meet Adina. It could have changed the entire outcome.
And she still has no idea how Michael was able to fake cancer so convincingly.
I don't know if he took weight pills or got his hands on actual chemo pills. I don't know what Michael did to make himself sick.
While Rachel didn't suffer like Adina, she is also a victim of Michael Parson's betrayal.
I think Rachel will never be able to trust the way she used to trust, but everything she does now shows me that she has hope.
The man I love doesn't exist. It's like being in love with a character in a book. He was never real.
Columbus, Ohio resident Jamie Hart had done his fair share of dating, but had never found the one connection that clicked.
I was just kind of looking for someone to go on a few dates with and see if there was any chemistry.
The 27-year-old collections agent always tried to keep a positive attitude. So in the early summer of 2008, while waiting for coffee at his local cafe, Jamie exchanged smiles with an attractive girl in line.
The line was extremely long. I made the comment, "Man, we're going to be here for a while." And she kind of chuckled and said,
Yeah, it looks like we are.
and we just kind of started talking back and forth.
The young woman introduced herself as Melissa Stredney. And when their coffee came, Jamie decided to keep the ball rolling.
So we just sat down and had a conversation for about an hour or so. I found her quite attractive. She seemed kind of quirky, kind of funny. She seemed to be free spirit, but well-adjusted.
And Jamie was impressed by the 27-year-old's drive and ambition.
She had her bachelor's degree already. She was a graduate teaching assistant for the chemistry department in a local university here. She had a lot of things going for her.
After exchanging phone numbers, Jamie was pleased when Melissa texted him almost immediately about seeing a movie together. The date went so well, soon the two were inseparable.
As the relationship progressed, there was more and more chemistry. I found myself falling in love with her.
Before Jamie knew it, he and Melissa were in a hot and heavy committed relationship just a few months into dating.
He was excited at that time, but me and my wife, we were kind of taken back as to how sudden things were developing in the relationship. But Jamie sounded extremely happy.
Still, Jamie was hesitant when, after 6 months together, Melissa asked him to move in with her.
Because I want you to move in with me.
It kind of seemed like the natural progression of how the relationship was going. But Melissa was moving a little bit more quickly than I was ready to do.
For the first time, Jamie gently put on the brakes. After all, they hadn't been through any of life's trials and tribulations yet. That is, until February that year.
Melissa told me that she was going to resign her position from the university. She didn't really go into detail why, just say there was a misunderstanding with her and some of the students. When I kind of probed about what the misunderstanding was, Melissa was upset, angry, so I didn't really question it.
Jamie wasn't sure what to think, but as the weeks passed, Melissa couldn't seem to stop crying.
She told me that she had depression and some anxiety issues that she was battling with for a few years. She went into a local hospital for depression. So I'm like, this must be a pretty bad spell. But there's a lot of people in the world that do battle depression. So it wasn't anything to stop me from continuing to see her.
Jamie was relieved when Melissa was discharged a week later.
She was taking medication and seeing a therapist once or twice every few weeks. That zeal and passion for life returned. She seemed to be back to her normal self.
Then Melissa told Jamie she had a big surprise for him.
She was at my apartment. She presented me with a card. And it said, "Congratulations, you're going to be a father." And I'm like, wow. All right, that's exciting.
Jamie was even more stunned when Melissa said she wasn't just pregnant, she was expecting triplets.
My reaction to that was shock. I wasn't out of the realm of possibilities in my mind because twins run in my family. Even though I was worried, like, how are we gonna do this? Being a father was one of my dreams.
But before long, his excitement would turn into heartache, and then horror.
Everywhere he went, she would show up.
She knew exactly what she was doing.
This was not the person I fell in love with. This was the ultimate betrayal.
In April of 2010, Jamie Hart and his girlfriend, Melissa Stredney, were expecting triplets.
There's an initial shock. There was that sense of excitement and happiness that comes with that.
He was ecstatic, nervous, freaked out, every emotion that you could feel. And he really took that responsibility seriously.
And since Melissa seemed to be doing so well with her antidepressants, Jamie felt it was time to take the next step in their relationship. Jamie moved in with Melissa, and the couple set a wedding date for October of that year.
I thought things were just moving too fast, and we even mentioned it to him. Are you sure this is something you want to do this early? And he said, yeah, this is what I want.
And as Jamie focused on his future with Melissa, he became even more excited about being a father.
I wanted to be an active member. These were my children that she was carrying, so I wanted to be there for every milestone.
But when Melissa started scheduling prenatal visits without him, Jamie couldn't help but feel slighted.
They always seemed to be when I was working or when I had other obligations. I would say, if you're having an appointment, let me know. I can get those days off. And she said she didn't want to burden me with that because we were in a little bit of financial difficulty, so missing work wasn't really an option.
But when Melissa shut Jamie out of a major pregnancy milestone, he grew flat out angry.
Sometime in the late stages of the first trimester, Melissa told me that she got an ultrasound. And I went, oh, awesome, can I see it? She said, well, my dad wanted to see it and I already mailed it to him. Why would you send it to your father but not let the father of the children see it? And I was quite upset that she did that. I wanted to be there for every appointment, and I made it very clear that that was very important to me.
Sadly, he wouldn't get the chance.
A few days later, I came home and Melissa was distraught, and she told me that she went to the hospital that day and that she actually miscarried. You know, I did my best to comfort her. I was in a state of shock. Both of us shed a lot of tears that night.
Jamie barely had time to feel his own grief before Melissa plunged back into a dark depression. Jamie even found himself questioning his desire to get married now that they were no longer expecting.
I had serious thoughts about ending engagement, but I kind of thought to end a relationship, especially someone you loved, after they had a miscarriage would be unforgivable.
He had already asked her to marry him, and he wanted to do the right thing as far as not abandoning her.
Then, almost overnight, Jamie saw an entirely different side to Melissa.
She would call me like worthless, just anything that she could think of. I would just kind of zone her out and not really hear what she was saying.
Until one night, when Melissa took her abuse to the next level.
It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and she was over top of me, just swinging away, physically assaulting me. She was telling me to get out of the house.
But when Jamie tried to leave, Melissa suddenly apologized.
She kind of made it into like, if I would have left, I would be abandoning her.
Jamie decided to let the incident slide, but despite his best efforts at keeping Melissa calm, there was no peace on the horizon. And before long, Jamie would realize his unhappy fiancée wasn't just miserable, she was monstrous.
She was very angry. Who knew what she was capable of?
It was crazy. He never believed that she would do that.
She knew where I would be. It was becoming more and more scary. I was thinking, how much longer can she do this?
In September of 2010, Jamie Hart's fiancée, Melissa Stredney, was becoming volatile after a miscarriage.
She was verbally abusing me and she was physically assaulting me. Even though she was suffering from depression, I was turning more and more into the victim.
She would threaten to commit suicide if he left. I think he had a sense of responsibility to her. He really was deep into that caregiver role.
Then one night, Jamie woke up to a frightening sight.
Melissa was awake, and I was like, "What are you doing up?" And she's like,
I can't sleep.
and then I see that she has in her hands a kitchen knife. I'm kind of dazed and confused. I'm like, "Why do you have a knife?" Her only response was,
I can't sleep. I can't sleep.
Jamie stayed calm and gently took the knife from Melissa's hand.
I was more concerned she was going to hurt herself than myself. I ended up staying up with her the rest of the night. She eventually kind of dozed off.
The following morning, Jamie reached out to Melissa's therapist. And soon Melissa was on some new medication. But Jamie was torn.
I was very upset. This woman was completely different than the woman that I met initially. But I can't abandon her. I was concerned about how she was going to get by if I would have left.
But just a few days later, Jamie finally reached his breaking point.
One evening I came home from going out with a friend. I noticed that Melissa was gone, which was kind of strange. But I also noticed some of my personal belongings were gone. There were mementos, photos, miscellaneous records, totally missing. I immediately called her and asked her where my belongings were. She just laughed and hung up on me. It was at that moment that I made the decision that I had enough. These were things that I would never be able to replace. She was stealing my memories. I called my father up and we packed up as much stuff as I could in my car and his car and left.
It was a separation of not only ending the relationship, but ending him knowing Melissa altogether.
But Melissa wasn't going to let Jamie go without a fight.
She was starting to send me threatening messages, saying that she would find me and stab me. They were always of physical harm. She knew where I would be at certain times of the day. It was becoming more and more scary. She would show up 1, 2, sometimes 3 times a week and try to confront me. I started trying to alter my patterns or places where I would be.
But Melissa would not be ignored. On December 14th, 2010, Jamie bundled up and drove into work. As he exited his car, braced against the freezing wind, he found himself facing something much colder.
I only made it about 10 feet from my car where I was immediately stopped by Melissa. I asked her what she was doing here. Melissa turned to me and said, "Get in my car or else." And I'm like, "Excuse me?"
Knowing instinctively not to get in, Jamie attempted to reason with Melissa.
And she pulled out a silver and black handgun. I was shocked, scared. I said, "What are you doing? You don't want to do this. Please put the gun away." At that moment, time kind of stopped for me. When it was clear to her that I was not going to get into her car, she shot me. I remember my vision going out black.
Pierced by the bullet in his left eye, Jamie's light dimmed and his sight vanished as Melissa fled the scene.
Melissa immediately pulled out of the parking lot. 8 separate people saw this incident and were already on the phone with the police.
Emergency vehicles were dispatched as authorities hurtled down Ohio highways to find and stop an armed madwoman.
It was like pulling a pin on a grenade.
Police were converging on the area. They didn't know what she might do next.
If you have a story for Who the Bleep and would like to appear on the series, go to investigation.discovery.com. On December 14th, 2010, police were hunting Jamie Hart's ex-fiancée, Melissa Stredney, after she fired a bullet into his face and fled. Within minutes, an officer locked onto Melissa's car.
Police officer pulled out behind her, lights and sirens signaling her to pull over. She would not stop.
As Melissa accelerated toward a busy intersection, the quick-thinking policeman made a tough decision.
He executed a maneuver in which he rammed the back of her car. With guns drawn, other officers converged. They didn't know if she still had that gun in the car or not. They didn't know what she might do next. They were able to pull her out of the car at gunpoint and take her into custody at that point.
Melissa slowly surrendered, but the gun was missing.
Melissa told the police that as she pulled out of the parking lot and onto the main road, she had pitched a gun out the window. They started walking from the point of where she left the business to the point of where she was arrested, and they were able to find the gun.
Melissa was charged with 5 felonies, including attempted murder and kidnapping. Meanwhile, Jamie was rushed to the nearest hospital.
I was instantly in shock. That was kind of a sleepless night for us. We were numb. Jamie, he was just in our prayers.
Miraculously, Jamie survived, but the bullet had completely destroyed his left eye, shattering his skull and entering the base of his tongue. Luckily, the bullet never pierced his brain.
They had to surgically remove the eye. It was shocking to see him laying there. It was very emotional.
Jamie's sight returned in his right eye, and as he healed, he began to see the full extent of Melissa's deceptive nature, starting with the misunderstanding with her job at the university.
Melissa told me that she resigned her position. What I later came to find out, she was fired from the university.
Apparently, Melissa had encouraged her lab class to cheat and to leave early. When some of the students reported her, she went on the offensive.
She followed up with making threatening emails to the students to the point where the police became involved. No formal charges were filed, but she was dismissed from her position.
And Jamie couldn't help but wonder if Melissa had lied about other things, too.
I ended up having doubts about whether the whole pregnancy was made up. I wasn't able to go to any of the doctor appointments. Never saw the ultrasound. I only had her word that she miscarried.
As Jamie tried to come to grips with all that had happened, Melissa claimed the shooting was an accident.
How did it go?
I don't know. I wasn't even holding the trigger at first. I'm not really a murdering person.
But when witnesses reported to police that Melissa aimed to kill, her defense shifted to an insanity plea. She described a lifelong battle with mental illness.
I was diagnosed with major depression when I was 12 and I was in a mental institution for 6 weeks. I went to the hospital in November because I'm bipolar and I went manic.
But Melissa's actions after she shot Jamie left her defense full of holes.
She fled the scene. She got rid of evidence. She was rational. She was goal-directed. There's lots of bipolar people out there that don't commit violent crimes in this nature. She knew what she did was wrong.
On June 21st, 2011, just 6 months after her vicious attack, Melissa finally accepted a plea deal to the lesser charges of felonious assault and tampering with evidence. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
I really wasn't happy with the 15 years. I think she uses her mental illness as an excuse for a lot of her actions. She knew exactly what she was doing that day. Her goal that day was to end my life.
Today, after 8 surgeries, Jamie's left eye socket and cheekbone have been successfully reconstructed.
They actually split his skull to go in and try to build up the cheekbones. That's pretty major surgery. He really hung in there. He's very brave.
But the emotional damage has been far worse.
I'm very guarded. I now have anxiety, post-traumatic stress, the nightmares that I suffer.
Though he'll never again see with his left eye, Jamie's vision of his future is clear.
This whole experience, it's made me more humble in the grand scheme of things. Every one of us want to be happy, and That's kind of what I'm seeking now, is just happiness.
London, November 5th, 1985. The sky above the sprawling capital is choked with smoke, a thick, acrid smog clinging to the damp pavement, illuminated by the exploding kaleidoscope of bonfire night. Fireworks scream into the black abyss, shattering the silence of the suburbs, a cacophony of celebration that masks a sinister reality unfolding on the ground. In the rhythmic thud of rockets and the hiss of sparklers, the city is distracted, eyes turned upward, mesmerized by the lights, leaving the shadows below unnoticed, unchecked, and deadly. It is the perfect night for a crime, the perfect cover for a predator who knows that a scream, even a desperate, lung-shredding shriek for help, will be swallowed whole by the roar of the festivities. In the borough of Ealing, the streets are slick with rain, reflecting the orange glow of sodium street lamps. It is a quiet, leafy neighborhood, the kind of place where front doors are left unlocked during the day, and neighbors know the names of each other's cats. But tonight, the air is heavy with something other than gunpowder. There is a tension, a static charge that raises the hair on the back of your neck. At 10:15 p.m., 19-year-old Clara soothingly steps off the number 65 bus. She is vibrant, full of life, a nursing student with a smile that could disarm the cynical London chill, clutching a bag of groceries and a new vinyl record she picked up in Soho earlier that day. She pulls her coat tighter against the biting wind, her breath visible in short, sharp bursts. She is 3 streets away from home, 3 streets away from safety. She doesn't know that she is already being watched. The footsteps behind her are faint, masked by the distant banging of fireworks, a syncopated rhythm that matches her own. She stops. The footsteps stop. She turns, scanning the long, tunnel-like stretch of Elmwood Avenue. Nothing but parked cars, their windshields weeping with drizzle, and the swaying skeletons of oak trees stripped bare by autumn. Paranoia, she thinks. Just the city playing tricks. But the instinct, that primal alarm bell buried deep in the reptilian brain, is ringing deafeningly loud. She picks up her pace, her heels clicking faster on the wet concrete. The shadows between the streetlights seem to stretch, reaching out for her. She is almost there. She can see the warm, yellow light of her parents' porch. It's a beacon, a promise. She reaches the gate. The metal latch is cold under her gloved hand. She pushes it open, the hinge squeaking a familiar greeting. And then, the world tilts. A shadow detaches itself from the hedge, not behind her, but right there, in the sanctity of her own front garden. A figure, draped in the darkness, immense and overwhelming. There is no time to scream, no time to drop the groceries. The collision is brutal, swift and silent. A gloved hand, smelling of engine oil and damp earth, clamps over her mouth, stifling the cry that dies in her throat. She is lifted, feet kicking uselessly against the air, dragged not into the street, but sideways, into the narrow, dark alleyway that runs between the semi-detached houses. The fireworks overhead explode in a grand finale, a thunderous applause that drowns out the scuffle, the soft thud of a body hitting the earth, and the terrifying silence that follows. Inside the house, the television is on. Clara's mother, Margaret, is knitting, glancing occasionally at the clock. 10:20 p.m. She's late. Just a few minutes, but Margaret knows Clara's routine. She's a good girl. She calls if she's delayed. A flicker of worry, small and nagging, lights up in Margaret's chest. She goes to the window, pulling back the heavy velvet curtains. The street is empty. The fireworks are dying down, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than before. She opens the front door, stepping out into the cold. "Clara," she calls out, her voice thin in the damp air. No answer, just the wind rustling the dead leaves in the gutter. Then she sees it, a splash of white on the wet path. Margaret steps closer, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. It's the bag of groceries, eggs broken, yolks bleeding into the rainwater. And beside it, the vinyl record, cracked down the middle. Panic, cold and sharp, floods her veins. She runs to the gate, looking left, looking right. Clara, she screams this time. A sound that tears through the polite silence of the neighborhood. Lights flicker on in the houses opposite. Curtains twitch, but the street remains stubbornly, terrifyingly empty. The police are called. The frantic, garbled plea of a mother realizing her worst nightmare has arrived on her doorstep. Blue lights slash through the darkness within minutes, painting the brickwork of Elmwood Avenue in strobe light bursts of azure. The investigation begins, chaotic and urgent. Uniformed officers tape off the garden, their boots crunching on the gravel. Flashlights cut beams through the fog, searching for clues, for footprints, for a body. But there is nothing. It is as if Clara dissolved into the ether. The detective inspector, a weary man named Galloway, arrives with the smell of stale tobacco and cheap coffee clinging to his trench coat. He looks at the broken eggs, the cracked record. He knows. He knows in his gut that this isn't a runaway case. This is an abduction, and the clock is already ticking. The first 24 hours are critical. They are bleeding time. Neighbors gather at the perimeter of the police tape. A huddle of dressing gowns and hushed whispers. Among them stands a man. He is unremarkable. Average height, thinning hair. Wearing a beige cardigan that has seen better days. He holds a cup of tea, his face etched with concern. This is Arthur. Arthur, the man who lives next door. The man who has lived there for 20 years. He approaches the police line, offering tea to the shivering young constable. Terrible business, he murmurs, shaking his head. She was such a lovely girl. I saw her just this morning. His voice is steady, calm, the voice of a concerned citizen, a pillar of the community. He watches the police scour the ground, his eyes dark and unreadable behind thick-rimmed glasses. He doesn't look like a monster. He looks like an uncle. He looks like safety. The investigation expands rapidly. Detectives knock on every door. They interview Arthur. He invites them in, apologizes for the mess. He's a bachelor. He explains, a bit disorganized. He offers them biscuits. He tells them he was watching a documentary on the war when he heard the commotion. He didn't hear a scream. He says, regretfully, those fireworks, you know, sounded like the Blitz out there. The detectives take notes. They thank him. They check his background. Clean. No record. A retired mechanic. A quiet man who keeps to himself. They leave his house, crossing his name off the list of immediate suspects. They walk right past the cellar door in his hallway, the one covered by a rug, the one that is locked from the outside. They walk away, stepping back into the night to chase shadows, unaware that the answer is breathing, watching, right behind them. Days turn into weeks. The face of Clara is plastered on every lamppost, every shop window in West London. Have you seen this girl? The headline screams from the tabloids. The community is in a state of high alert. Women don't walk alone at night anymore. Fathers wait at bus stops with baseball bats. The fear is palpable. A living thing that stalks the streets of Ealing. But the leads are drying up. There were no witnesses. No tire tracks. No forensic evidence left in the rain-soaked garden. Just a girl there 1 second and gone the next. The police drag the canal. They search the local woods. Nothing. Galloway is losing sleep. He sits in his office, surrounded by stacks of paper, the smoke from his cigarette curling up towards the yellowed ceiling. He stares at the map of the area, pins marking the location of the abduction and the verified locations of known sex offenders. None of them fit. The timing doesn't work. The profile is wrong. This wasn't a crime of opportunity committed by a drifter. This was precise. This was someone who knew the layout, someone who knew where the shadows were deepest. He slams his fist on the desk. We are missing something, he growls to his sergeant. It's right in front of us. Meanwhile, life next door continues with a disturbing normality. Arthur tends to his garden. He prunes his roses, despite the winter chill. He waves at Margaret when she comes out, pale and ghostly, to collect the mail. He asks if there is any news, his face a mask of sympathy. "I pray for her every night," he tells her, his hand resting gently on the garden fence. "If there is anything I can do, Margaret, anything at all." She thanks him, tears welling in her eyes, grateful for having such a kind neighbor in these dark times. She doesn't notice the dirt under his fingernails. She doesn't notice that he has installed a new padlock on his garden shed. She doesn't hear the faint, muffled sounds coming from beneath his floorboards late at night, dismissed as the settling of an old house or the rumbling of the underground trains miles away. The media frenzy begins to fade as Christmas approaches. A missing girl is news. A missing girl who stays missing is a statistic. The posters begin to peel, battered by the London rain. The specialized search teams are reassigned. The case is slowly, painfully shifting from active to cold. But for the family, time has stopped. Clara's room is untouched, a shrine to a life interrupted. The vinyl record she bought sits glued together on her dresser, a silent testament to the night the music died. They wait for a phone call that never comes. They wait for a ransom note. They wait for a body. The uncertainty is a torture more exquisite than any physical pain. But Galloway refuses to let go. He keeps coming back to the street. He walks the route Clara took. He stands at the bus stop. He times the walk. 5 minutes. She was 5 minutes from home. He stands in her front garden, looking around. He looks at the houses opposite. He looks at the house next door. Arthur's house. He sees the curtain move in the upstairs window. Just a twitch. He frowns. It's nothing, he tells himself. The old man is just lonely. But a seed is planted. A tiny, irrational seed of suspicion that refuses to germinate because the logic isn't there. Why would a 60-year-old retired mechanic with no history of violence suddenly snatch a girl from her doorstep? It doesn't make sense. And in 1985, without DNA profiling, without CCTV on every corner, logic and gut instinct are all a copper has. The winter of 1985 is harsh. Snow blankets the city, hiding the grime, hiding the secrets. Under the cover of this white silence, the killer becomes confident. He realizes he has gotten away with it. The police have stopped knocking. The questions have stopped. He begins to live his double life with a terrifying ease. By day, the helpful neighbor. By night, the keeper of the secret. He feels a sense of power, a god complex fueled by the proximity of his crime to the investigation. He watched them search. He watched them cry. He was part of the narrative, woven into the grief of the family he destroyed. This proximity is his drug. Then, a strange detail emerges. A report from a local newsagent, filed weeks ago, but buried in the paperwork. A witness, a young paperboy, mentioned seeing a car parked 2 streets away on the night of the disappearance. A blue Ford Escort. Not unusual for the time, but the boy noted something specific. The car had a sticker in the rear window, a sticker for a garage in Leeds. Galloway reads the report, rubbing his tired eyes. Leeds. That's 200 miles away. Why would a car from Leeds be parked on a residential street in Ealing on a Tuesday night? It's a loose thread, a tiny, frayed edge in the tapestry of the perfect crime. Galloway orders a check on all blue Ford Escorts registered in the area, cross-referencing with connections to Leeds. It's a manual, painstaking process. Files are pulled. Phone calls are made. It takes weeks. But then a hit. Not a direct match, but a connection. A car sold 3 months ago at an auction in the north, bought by a man with a P.O. box in West London. The trail is faint, barely there, but it's something. Galloway feels the adrenaline kick in. He's back in the hunt. He doesn't know yet that this car will lead him down a rabbit hole of false hope, a diversion that will cost them precious years. Because the car didn't belong to the killer. The killer didn't need a car. He didn't need to transport the body. He didn't need to go anywhere. The year turns. 1986 arrives. The missing posters are now faded ghosts. The community has moved on, though the shadow remains. People lock their doors earlier. The innocence of the neighborhood is gone, stolen in the night. Clara becomes a cautionary tale, whispered to teenagers. Don't be late. Remember Clara. She is becoming a myth, a ghost story, but in the house next door. The reality is far from mythical. The killer is getting restless. The high is wearing off. He stands at his window, watching Margaret weep in her garden as she plants daffodils for spring. He feels a twinge, not of guilt, but of anticipation. He realizes that one secret is not enough. The hunger is returning. The beast next door is waking up from its hibernation. And the silence of the cold case is about to be shattered not by solution, but by an escalation. The lead regarding the blue Ford Escort becomes the lifeline the investigation is desperately clinging to. It is a thin, fraying rope thrown into a turbulent sea, but Detective Inspector Galloway grabs it with both hands. The logic is tenuous, woven from the uncertain memory of a teenage paper boy and a sticker from a garage 200 miles north. But in the vacuum of evidence, even a whisper sounds like a shout. A team of officers is dispatched to Leeds. They are chasing a ghost car. They scour the auction records, sifting through handwritten ledgers stained with coffee rings and cigarette ash. The bureaucracy is a slow, grinding machine. This is an era before digital databases, before license plate recognition cameras. This is leather-shoe detective work. It is knocking on doors. It is intimidation and persuasion. It is waiting by payphones in the pouring rain. Back in London, the hope is contagious. Margaret is told about the car. She clings to the information as if it were a holy relic. A car means movement. A car means Clara might not be in Ealing anymore. It means she could be alive, held somewhere waiting. Margaret constructs elaborate fantasies in the silence of her living room. Maybe Clara was taken by a gang. Maybe it's a ransom situation that went wrong, and they are just waiting for the heat to die down. The mind will invent any scenario, no matter how horrific, to avoid the finality of death. She sits by the window, watching the street, imagining a blue Ford pulling up to the curb, her daughter stepping out, shaken but whole. She doesn't look at the house next door. She doesn't look at Arthur, who is meticulously washing his own car in the driveway. The soapy water running into the gutter, swirling pink in the sunset. The Leeds team finally gets a break. They trace the buyer of the Escort, a man named Silas, a petty criminal with a record for burglary and fencing stolen goods. He has a connection to West London. He has an aunt in Acton, just a few miles from Ealing. The pieces seem to snap together with a satisfying magnetic click. Galloway feels the surge of triumph. This is it. The puzzle is solving itself. A raid is organized. The date is set. February 1986. The dawn raid is executed with military precision. Sledgehammers shatter the door of a squalid flat in Acton. Men scream. Dogs bark. Silas is dragged out of bed in his underwear, bewildered, blinking in the harsh glare of flashlights. They tear his flat apart. They rip up the floorboards. They empty the cupboards. They drag him to the station and interrogate him for 48 hours straight. Galloway leans in, his face inches from Silas, smelling the fear on the man. Where is she? He demands. Where is Clara? But Silas knows nothing. He cries. He begs. He admits to the burglaries. He admits to stealing the car. He admits to selling drugs. But Clara? He stares back with the genuine, terrifying emptiness of the innocent. He was in prison in Manchester on the night of November 5th. He has an alibi, ironclad, unbreakable. The prison records confirm it. Silas was locked in a cell 200 miles away, while Clara was being snatched from her garden. The balloon pops. The air rushes out of the investigation with a sickening hiss. The blue Ford was a red herring, a coincidence. A phantom. Galloway sits in his office. The silence deafening. The sheer weight of the failure presses down on him. They have wasted 3 months chasing a shadow, while the real trail has turned to ice. He has to go to Margaret. He has to look a mother in the eye and tell her that the hope he gave her was false, that they are back to zero, that they are back to the dark alleyway and the silence. Arthur watches the police car pull up to Margaret's house. He watches Galloway get out, his shoulders slumped, his gait heavy. Arthur knows. He can read the body language of defeat. He sips his tea, standing behind the net curtains of his living room. A small, cold smile touches his lips. He is safe. The storm has passed over his roof. He feels a strange affection for the detective. The man is trying so hard. It's almost admirable. But he is looking for a criminal. And Arthur doesn't feel like a criminal. He feels like a man who simply did what was necessary. A man who acted on an impulse that felt as natural as breathing. He decides to pay Margaret a visit. It's the neighborly thing to do. He bakes a sponge cake. He puts on his best cardigan. He knocks on the door. Margaret answers. Her eyes red. Her face swollen. She looks like she has aged 10 years in 3 months. Arthur, she says, her voice cracking. Come in. He sits with her in the kitchen where Clara used to eat her breakfast. He cuts the cake. He pours the tea. He listens as she weeps, telling him about the dead end, the failure of the police. They don't know anything, she sobs. It's like she vanished off the face of the earth. Arthur nods, his face a mask of sorrow. It's a tragedy, he says softly. A terrible, terrible tragedy. But you must have hope, Margaret. The Lord works in mysterious ways. He pats her hand. His hand is warm. It is the hand that clamped over Clara's mouth. It is the hand that dragged her into the dark. But to Margaret, it is a lifeline, a touch of humanity in a world that has turned cold and hostile. She thanks him. She tells him he is a good man. The irony is so thick it chokes the air in the room, but only Arthur can taste it. He savors it. It feeds him. It empowers him. He is the wolf sitting at the table with the sheep, and the sheep is thanking him for his company. Spring arrives. The daffodils Margaret planted bloom. Bright yellow trumpets mocking the gloom of the house. The investigation is officially scaled down. The incident room is disbanded. The files are boxed up, labeled, and moved to the archives. Unsolved. The word is a stamp of failure. The media moves on to the next scandal, the next tragedy. London is a city that eats its own history, burying the old beneath the new. The disappearance of Clara becomes a local legend, a cautionary whisper, but it is no longer headline news. The posters on the lampposts are torn down by the council cleaners, scrubbing the streets clean of the uncomfortable reminder. But for the family, the nightmare is just beginning. The adrenaline of the search is gone, replaced by the crushing weight of absence. The silence in the house is a physical presence. Clara's father, John, retreats into himself. He stops talking. He spends his evenings in the shed, staring at the wall, unable to comfort his wife, unable to face the void where his daughter used to be. The marriage begins to fracture. Grief is not a glue. It is a solvent. It dissolves the bonds of intimacy. They sleep in separate rooms. They eat in silence. They are ghosts haunting their own lives. And right next door, Arthur is thriving. The fear of capture has completely evaporated. He begins to take risks. Small ones. He keeps a souvenir, the vinyl record. He managed to slip it into his pocket before the police arrived that first night. He keeps it in a locked drawer in his bedroom. Sometimes, late at night, when the street is asleep, he takes it out. He runs his fingers over the cracked plastic. He doesn't play it. He doesn't need to. Just holding it brings the rush back. The smell of the rain, the feel of her coat, the power. It is an addiction, and like all addictions, it demands more. He starts watching the other women in the neighborhood. He notes their schedules. The young teacher at number 42. The nurse at number 18. He isn't planning anything, he tells himself. He is just observing. Just a hobby. But he finds himself standing in the garden at odd hours, trimming the hedge in the dark, his eyes scanning the street. The neighbors think he is eccentric. Poor Arthur, they say, living all alone in that big house. He's a bit odd, but harmless. Harmless. The word is a shield. It protects him. It makes him invisible. 1987 rolls in. The world is changing. The stock market booms. The Cold War is thawing. But in Ealing, the frost is permanent. Galloway has retired. He couldn't handle the ghosts. He handed the file over to a new detective chief inspector, an ambitious man named Thorne. Thorne looks at the Clara file. He sees a mess. He sees missed opportunities. He sees the blue Ford fiasco. He wants to make a name for himself. He orders a review. Cold Case Review 87/A. It sounds official. It sounds promising. Thorne decides to re-interview the neighbors. He wants to shake the tree, see if anything falls out. He sends a young female constable, distinct from the gruff men of the initial inquiry, hoping a softer approach might yield new gossip. She knocks on Arthur's door. He opens it, smiling, wiping his hands on a rag. He invites her in. She sits in the same chair Galloway sat in. She looks around the living room. It is neat. Too neat. There are no personal photos. No clutter. It is a stage set. Mr. Arthur, she says, her pen hovering over her notebook. We are just going over the timeline again, just to be thorough. You said you were watching television that night. Do you remember what program? Arthur doesn't blink. He has rehearsed this. It was a documentary on the Blitz, he says smoothly. On BBC too. I remember because the sirens on the TV, mixed with the fireworks outside. It was quite atmospheric. The constable notes it down. She checks the TV listings for November 5th, 1985. It checks out. There was a documentary on the Blitz. Arthur is clever. He anchors his lies in the truth. He makes them verifiable. The constable asks about his cellar. We noticed on the original report that the cellar wasn't fully inspected. Just a quick look. Do you mind if I take a peek? Just to tick the box. Arthur's heart skips a beat. A single, violent thud against his ribs. The cellar. That is where the history is. That is where the secret sleeps. But he doesn't show it. He smiles. A benevolent, slightly confused smile. The cellar? My dear, it's full of damp and spiders. I haven't been down there in years. The stairs are rotten. It's not safe. He gestures to the rug covering the door. I boarded it up last winter to stop the draft. The constable hesitates. She looks at the rug. She looks at the kindly old man. She is tired. It is the end of her shift. She doesn't want to move a rug and pry open a boarded door for a routine check on a witness who has been cleared a dozen times. That's fine, she says, closing her notebook. I'll just note that it's inaccessible. She stands up to leave. Arthur walks her to the door. I hope you find answers, he says. For Margaret's sake. It breaks my heart to see her so sad. The constable nods. We're trying, sir. We're trying. She walks away. Arthur closes the door. He locks it. He slides the bolt. He leans his back against the wood and exhales a long, shaky breath. That was close. Too close. The police are like dogs with a bone. They might bury it, but they always come back to dig. He realizes he needs to be more careful. He needs to secure his domain. That night, he pulls back the rug. He unlocks the padlock. He descends into the darkness of the cellar. The air is stale, smelling of earth and time. He doesn't turn on the light. He knows the way by touch. He moves to the far corner, behind the stacks of old newspapers and rusted tools. He checks the concrete. It is undisturbed, but the fear has woken him up. He needs to make sure that even if they look, they find nothing. He spends the next week buying concrete mix. Small bags, bought from different hardware stores across London, so as not to arouse suspicion. He carries them in at night, one by one. He mixes the cement in the cellar, working by the light of a single candle. He pours a new layer of floor over the corner, a second skin, a tomb within a tomb. He works with a manic energy, sweat dripping from his forehead. He is sealing the past. He is burying the evidence under inches of gray, impenetrable stone. When he is finished, he is exhausted but euphoric. He paints the floor gray to match the old concrete. He piles the junk back on top. It is perfect. It is invisible. He climbs the stairs, emerging into the hallway, like a diver surfacing from the deep. He has won again. He has outsmarted them. He showers, scrubbing the cement dust from his skin, scrubbing the guilt away. He puts on his pajamas. He makes a cup of cocoa. He sits by the window and looks out at the moon. He thinks about the constable. She was young, pretty, dark hair just like Clara. He wonders where she lives. He wonders if she walks home alone. The thought is fleeting, a dark spark, but it lingers. The beast is not satisfied with safety. It wants the thrill. The close call with the police didn't scare him off. It invigorated him. It reminded him that he is alive, and they're just pawns in his game. Meanwhile, in the house of the grieving, a letter arrives. It is anonymous. Cut-out letters from a newspaper glued onto a sheet of cheap lined paper. It is a cliché, a sick joke, but to John and Margaret, it is a bombshell. The letter says, "She is cold. She wants to come home." No demand for money, no location, just those 7 words. The cruelty is breathtaking. Margaret collapses when she reads it. John calls Detective Thorne. Thorne holds the letter in a plastic bag. He examines it. No fingerprints, just the smudge of glue. The postmark is local. West London. This changes things. This isn't a prank from a bored kid in Scotland. This was mailed from within the hunting ground. Thorne feels a chill. The killer is still here. He is watching. He is taunting them. The dormant case suddenly flares back to life, fueled by the sadistic ink of a psychopath. The press gets wind of it. The taunt. The headlines return. The circus is back in town. And Arthur, sitting in his armchair, reading the morning paper, sees the headline and feels a surge of pride. He didn't send the letter. It wasn't him. But he appreciates the work of an admirer. Or perhaps a copycat. Or perhaps just a cruel phantom of the city itself. But it serves his purpose. It creates chaos. And in chaos, the chameleon is king. The investigation spins up again, chasing the letter, analyzing the paper, the glue, the handwriting style. They are looking at the letter. They are not looking at the floorboards next door. The 80s draw to a close. The decade of excess, of neon and noise, ends in a whimper for the Clara investigation. The letter leads nowhere. Just another dead end in a maze of mirrors. 1989. The Berlin Wall falls. The world is being remade. But Elmwood Avenue is frozen in time. The parents are shells. The detective is frustrated. And the killer is getting older, getting bolder, and getting ready for the next act. The silence of the grave has been disturbed, not by justice, but by the passage of time, which rots everything, evidence, memories, and the very soul of the community. The stage is set for the 90s, a decade where science will begin to catch up with secrets, and where Arthur will have to play his deadliest game yet to keep the cellar door closed. The 90s arrive not with a bang, but with the quiet, digital hum of a changing world. The Iron Curtain has crumbled. The Berlin Wall is sold as souvenirs, and in labs across the UK, men in white coats are looking through microscopes at twisting strands of helixes that will change the face of criminal justice forever. It is the dawn of the DNA age, the age where a drop of sweat, a flake of skin, or a single hair becomes a neon sign pointing directly to the guilty. But in Ealing on Elmwood Avenue, the past refuses to give way to the future. The street is stuck in a sepia-tone loop of November 1985. The trees have grown thicker, their roots buckling the pavement, and the paint on the houses has peeled, but the shadow remains. For John and Margaret, the turn of the decade is the breaking point. Grief is a heavy stone. Carry it for a month, it's exhausting. Carry it for 5 years, and it crushes the spine. John, the silent, stoic father, finally shatters. He cannot live in the mausoleum anymore. He cannot look at the empty chair at the dinner table. He packs a suitcase one rainy Tuesday morning. There is no shouting, no argument. Just the quiet, devastating realization that he is drowning and must swim away to survive. He leaves Margaret alone in the house of memories. He leaves her with the ghost of their daughter. And he leaves her with the neighbor. Arthur watches John's taxi drive away. He stands at his window, sipping his morning tea, a sentinel of the suburbs. He feels a ripple of satisfaction. The herd is thinning. The protectors are leaving. Margaret is now isolated, a wounded bird in a big, empty nest. He waits a respectful 2 days before knocking on her door. He brings a casserole. He brings sympathy. "I saw John leave," he says, his voice thick with faux regret. Men, they handle things differently. They run. We stay. He includes himself in the we. He aligns himself with her suffering. He enters the house not as a guest, but as a fixture. He sits in John's chair. He drinks from John's mugs. He fixes the leaky tap in the kitchen, the very kitchen where Clara prepared her last meal. He is the helpful hand, the shoulder to cry on. Margaret, blinded by loneliness and the fog of depression, sees a savior. She doesn't see the predator curling up on her hearth rug. She talks to him about Clara. She tells him stories he has never heard, about her childhood, her fears, her dreams. Arthur listens intently. He is collecting data. He is consuming the life of the girl he stole, piece by piece, through the memories of the mother. It is a psychological cannibalism, intimate and grotesque. But while Arthur plays the role of the benevolent uncle, a storm is brewing in the headlines. The case of Colin Pitchfork makes the news. The first murderer caught using genetic fingerprinting. The science is hailed as a miracle. The genetic detective, the papers call it. Arthur reads these articles in the privacy of his living room. His hands tremble slightly, rattling the newspaper. He understands the implications immediately. He is a mechanic. He understands how systems work. He understands that he left traces. Not on the street. The rain washed those away. But on the girl. If they ever found her. If they ever found a single scrap of clothing, the science could speak the name he has kept hidden for so long. Paranoia strikes him like a fever. He becomes obsessed with the cellar. He goes down there every night. He checks the concrete. Is it cracking? Is there a smell? The mind is a powerful engine for terror. He imagines he can smell decay through the layers of cement. He buys industrial-strength bleach. He scrubs the floor until his knuckles are raw. He scrubs the walls. He scrubs the stairs. The smell of chlorine becomes his cologne. It seeps into his clothes, a sharp, chemical scent that masks the odor of his fear. One afternoon in 1992, a crisis occurs. A blockage in the main sewage pipe that runs beneath the back gardens of the row. The water company sends a team. They need access. They need to dig. They knock on Margaret's door. She lets them in. They knock on Arthur's door. A young man in a high-vis jacket, holding a clipboard. "Just need to check the inspection hatch in your backyard, sir. And we might need to run a scope from your cellar if the blockage is deep." The word cellar acts like a taser. Arthur freezes. The blood drains from his face. "The cellar," he repeats, his voice tight. "No, that's not possible." The workman looks confused. "It's standard procedure, sir. Won't take 10 minutes. Arthur blocks the doorway. His body language changes. The kindly old man vanishes. In his place is a guard dog, hackles raised, teeth bared. "I said no," he snaps, aggressive loud. "My cellar is unsafe. The stairs are rotten. No one goes down there. Dig up the street if you have to, but you're not coming inside. The workman steps back, startled by the ferocity. All right, mate. Keep your hair on. We'll try from the other side. He walks away, muttering about crazy old coots. Arthur slams the door. He leans against it, heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. That was a mistake. He lost control. He showed them the teeth. He watches through the spy hole until the van drives away. He realizes the fragility of his freedom. One blocked pipe, one ambitious plumber, and the tomb is opened. He needs to be smarter. He needs to be friendlier. He cannot afford to be the crazy neighbor. He must be the nice neighbor with a valid reason. He spends the next week constructing a lie. He tells Margaret and the other neighbors that he has discovered asbestos in the basement. Terrible stuff, he says, shaking his head. Deadly. I've had it sealed off completely. Professional job. Can't risk the fibers getting out. It's a brilliant lie. It explains the sealed door. It explains why no one can enter. It uses fear to repel curiosity. People stay away from asbestos. It is the perfect invisible guard dog. Meanwhile, the investigation into Clara's disappearance undergoes a silent evolution. The old files are being digitized. The Metropolitan Police are modernizing. The sheer volume of paper is being fed into computers, names and dates turned into binary code. This process triggers automatic flags. In 1994, a young detective constable named Sarah, working in the newly formed Cold Case Review Unit, is tasked with data entry for the unsolved stack of 1985. She types in the names. She types in the locations. She pauses at the file for Elmwood Avenue. She notices the Leeds car investigation. She reads the conclusion, the dead end. She reads the witness statements. She reads the interview with the neighbor, Arthur. Witness states he was watching BBC Two. Blitz documentary. Sarah is thorough. She is of the generation that checks everything. She pulls the broadcasting archives for that night. BBC Two. 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. November 5th, 1985. There was no documentary on the Blitz. There was a sitcom rerun, followed by the news. The documentary on the Blitz aired on Channel 4, 2 days later. It is a tiny discrepancy, a slip of the memory. It could mean nothing. People get channels mixed up. People get days mixed up. But in a murder investigation, a lie about an alibi, no matter how small, is a thread that demands pulling. Sarah flags it. She puts a sticky note on the digital file. Check TV listings versus witness statement. Arthur, 46, Elmwood Avenue. But the unit is underfunded. The backlog is massive. The note sits there. A digital breadcrumb waiting for a hungry bird. It gets buried under the weight of more recent, more violent crimes. The system is overwhelmed, and the clue sleeps in the server, dormant. Back on the street, the dynamic shifts again. Margaret's health begins to fail. The stress, the grief, the years of not knowing have eaten away at her immune system. She becomes frail. She relies on Arthur for everything. He does her shopping. He manages her garden. He even has a key to her house. He is the master of 2 domains now. He moves between the houses like a ghost, crossing the garden fence that separates the victim's shrine from the killer's lair. He starts to feel a twisted ownership over Margaret. She is his pet, his creation. He feeds off her gratitude. I don't know what I would do without you, Arthur, she says, coughing into a handkerchief. You're the only family I have left. The words are nectar to him. He has replaced the daughter he killed. He has replaced the husband he drove away. He has won the ultimate victory. He has consumed the entire family, leaving only this husk of a woman who worships him. But the 90s are also the era of Crime Watch. The TV show is a national phenomenon. Every month, millions tune in to watch dramatic reconstructions of unsolved crimes. In 1995, for the 10-year anniversary, the producers decide to feature Clara's case. They want to reignite the public memory. They film on Elmwood Avenue. They hire an actress who looks like Clara. They hire an actor to play the attacker. Arthur watches the filming from his window. It is surreal. He sees the past replayed in high definition. He sees the attacker grab the girl. He critiques the performance in his head. No, he thinks, it wasn't like that. I didn't grab her arm. I grabbed her waist. And she didn't scream. She gasped. He feels a surge of director's arrogance. He wants to go out there and correct them. Do it right if you're going to do it at all. But he stays behind the curtain. The episode airs. The phone lines at the police station light up. Hundreds of calls. Psychics, cranks, well-wishers, and people with suspicions. A name pops up. A former colleague of Arthur's from the garage where he used to work. I remember Arthur. The caller says. He was a quiet bloke. But he had a temper. And he knew that area. He used to date a girl who lived 2 streets over from Elmwood back in the 60s. The tip is logged. It's weak. Dating a girl in the 60s doesn't make you a kidnapper in the 80s. But it adds another pebble to the scale. The name Arthur is now in the database twice. Once as a witness, once as a person of interest. The computer algorithms of the mid-90s are primitive, but they're starting to make connections that human eyes missed. The net is not tightening, but the mesh is getting smaller. Arthur feels the pressure. The Crime Watch episode brought gawkers to the street. People pointing at the spot where she vanished. Pointing at his house. He decides he needs a distraction. He needs to solidify his mask. He joins the local neighborhood watch. He becomes the treasurer. He organizes the meetings. He sits at the head of the table in the community hall, discussing safety, discussing suspicious vans, discussing the need for better street lighting. It is the ultimate camouflage. The wolf is not just in sheep's clothing. He is leading the flock. He lectures the community on vigilance. We must look out for each other. He tells the room full of anxious parents. We must know who belongs and who doesn't. He is calm, authoritative, respected. He is the elder of Elmwood Avenue. No one suspects the treasurer. No one suspects the man who prints the flyers warning about stranger danger. But inside the house, the decay is spreading. The floorboards in the hallway are starting to creak ominously. The damp is rising. The house knows. The house is trying to reject the secret in its belly. Arthur notices a crack in the gray paint of the cellar floor. A hairline fracture. It's probably just subsidence. The London clay's shifting. But to him, it looks like a mouth opening. He spends a frantic weekend repainting, ceiling covering. He buys a heavy rug. Then he buys a chest freezer and places it directly over the spot. A freezer full of frozen peas and meat, humming loudly, masking the silence, guarding the spot. The weight of the freezer is symbolic. It is cold. It is heavy. It is permanent. He feels safe again, but he is getting old. His back hurts when he lifts the groceries. His hands are developing arthritis. He wonders, for the first time, about his own mortality. What happens when he dies? Who will clear the house? Who will move the freezer? The thought is a cold spike in his gut. He has no heirs. The council will take the property. They will renovate. They will dig. He realizes he has to outlive the house. Or he has to destroy it. He starts fantasizing about fires. A gas leak. An electrical fault. A cleansing blaze that would turn the house, the cellar, and the secret into ash and rubble. But he can't do it. Not yet. He has nowhere else to go. He is a prisoner of his own sanctuary. He is chained to the corpse in the basement just as surely as if he were wearing cuffs. As 1999 approaches, the millennium bug panic grips the world. People are worried about computers crashing, about planes falling out of the sky. Arthur is worried about something else. Margaret is dying. The cancer is aggressive. She has weeks, maybe days. He sits by her bedside in the hospice. She holds his hand. Her grip is weak. Her skin papery. Arthur, she whispers, her eyes clouded. Promise me something. Anything, Margaret. Don't let them forget her. Don't let Clara fade away. I won't, he promises. I remember her every day. You're a good man, she breathes. Clara would have liked you. The words hit him like a physical blow. Clara would have liked you. The enormity of the deception, the absolute perfection of his evil, almost makes him dizzy. He squeezes her hand. Rest now, Margaret. She closes her eyes. She dies thinking the monster holding her hand is an angel. Arthur walks out of the hospice into the gray London afternoon. He is the sole survivor. The family is extinct. He has wiped them out root and branch. He walks back to Elmwood Avenue, his footsteps echoing on the pavement. He looks at Margaret's empty house. Then he looks at his own. He is the king of the dead, but as he fumbles for his keys, he drops them. They clatter into the gutter. He bends down to pick them up, and his back seizes. A sharp, blinding pain. He falls to his knees, gasping. A neighbor, a young woman who just moved in across the street, runs over. Are you okay? Do you need help? She asks, reaching for him. I'm fine, he snarls, slapping her hand away. The pain makes him careless. The mask slips. She recoils, shocked by the venom in his eyes. Just trying to help, she mutters, backing away. Arthur struggles to his feet, clutching his keys. He limps to his door, unlocks it, and slams it shut. He leans against the wood, breathing hard. He is old. He is breaking down, and the young woman across the street is watching him. She is the new generation. She doesn't know he is the nice old man. She just saw a flash of something else, something dark, and she won't forget it. The millennium is coming, and with it, a new breed of skepticism. The armor is cracking. The millennium turns. The year 2000 arrives not with the apocalyptic crash of computers that the world feared, but with a kaleidoscope of fire over the River Thames, a celebration of survival, and the promise of a digital future. But on Elmwood Avenue, the fireworks are just echoes of that night 15 years ago. For Arthur, the turning of the century is not a new beginning. It is simply another notch on the prison wall. Another year survived in the fortress of his own making. The world outside is speeding up. Dial-up internet screams through the phone lines, connecting people, shrinking the world, making secrets harder to keep. But Arthur doesn't own a computer. He refuses to let the world in. He unplugs his phone. He draws the curtains. He is becoming a relic, a man out of time, guarding a tomb that belongs to a different era. The greatest threat to Arthur's security is no longer the police. It is the economy. London is booming. Property prices are skyrocketing. The quiet, leafy suburb of Ealing is being discovered by a new generation of wealthy professionals. The yuppies are moving in. They drive German cars. They install alarm systems. They don't chat over the fence. They send emails. And they renovate. This is Arthur's nightmare. The sound of the city changing is the sound of jackhammers, skips being dropped on pavement, and the tearing down of the old to make way for the open plan new. The house next door, Margaret's house, the shrine to the missing girl, finally exits probate. It is sold within days. The for sale sign is replaced by sold. And then the invasion begins. A young couple buys it. Architects. They have vision. They have blueprints. They see the dusty, sad house not as a tragedy, but as a fixer-upper with period features. They don't know about Clara. To them, she is just a rumor, a sad story told by the estate agent to lower the price. They're focused on the future. They want to extend. They want to dig. Arthur watches from his upstairs window as the skip arrives. It lands with a heavy, metallic clang that shakes the foundations of his own house. He flinches. Every vibration travels through the shared brickwork, through the floorboards, down into the cellar. He imagines the concrete casing around the body cracking, a hairline fracture widening with every blow of the sledgehammer next door. He watches the workmen swarm the garden, her garden. They rip out the daffodils Margaret planted. They tear down the old shed where John used to weep. They are erasing the sanctuary. Then the letter arrives. A party wall agreement. The new neighbors, Simon and Julia, want to dig foundations for a kitchen extension. They need to dig deep. They need to dig right up to the boundary line, right up to the fence where Arthur stood in the shadows that night. He reads the legal document, his hand shaking so hard the paper rattles. Access is required. Surveyors need to check the stability of his wall. They need to come inside. They need to check his foundations, which means they need to check his cellar. Panic, cold and sharp, floods his system. It is 1992 all over again, but worse. These people have lawyers. They have rights. He cannot just slam the door. He puts on his suit, now moth-eaten and tied around the waist. He marches next door. He meets Simon in the driveway. Simon is young, confident, holding a roll of plans. "Mr. Arthur," Simon says, smiling, extending a hand. "Good to meet you finally. We're excited to get started." Arthur ignores the hand. "You cannot dig," he says, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. "My house is old. It's fragile. You'll bring the whole thing down." Simon's smile falters. "We've had the structural engineers look at it, Arthur. It's perfectly safe. We just need to underpin the shared wall. It's standard." "I don't care about your engineers." Arthur spits, his face flushing red. "I do not give permission. You stay away from my wall. You stay away from my cellar." He turns and storms off, leaving Simon bewildered. The nice old man, mask has slipped completely. Arthur is now the difficult neighbor, the obstacle, and obstacles in the London property market are there to be removed. Simon and Julia don't back down. They send letters, solicitors' letters, threatening legal action if he denies access for essential structural safety works. Arthur is under siege. He stops sleeping. He sits in his hallway, staring at the front door, waiting for the bailiffs, waiting for the police. He realizes he has to escalate his defense. He cannot let them in. Not ever. He replies to the lawyers, claiming he has a severe anxiety disorder, that he is agoraphobic, that strangers in the house will cause him a heart attack. He weaponizes his age and his frailty. He plays the victim card. It buys him time. The digging is delayed. The dispute drags on. But the stress is taking a toll. Arthur's heart, the engine of his deception, is beginning to sputter. He gets palpitations. He feels dizzy when he stands up too fast. He looks in the mirror and sees a stranger. Gaunt, gray-skinned, eyes wild and sunken. The secret is eating him from the inside out. He is becoming the physical manifestation of his crime. He looks like a ghoul. Down in the cellar, the freezer hums. It is the heartbeat of the house. A steady, rhythmic thrum that masks the silence. But the freezer is old now. Bought in the mid-90s, it is struggling. Ice builds up thick and fast on the rim. The motor chugs. One night, during a summer thunderstorm in 2002, the power goes out. The street plunges into darkness. The hum stops. The silence that follows is deafening. Arthur wakes up in a cold sweat. He stumbles down the stairs in the dark, flashlight beam bouncing off the walls. He reaches the cellar door, unlocks the padlock, and descends. He stands before the freezer in the pitch black. He places his hand on the lid. It is still cold. But for how long? If the meat thaws, if the smell escapes, he sits there in the dark, guarding the appliance like a sentinel, praying for the electricity to return. He sits there for 6 hours. In the silence, he starts to hear things. Not the house settling, but voices. Her voice. A whisper in the corner of the room. "Let me out." He shines the flashlight at the concrete floor. The shadows dance. Is that a crack? Is that movement? He is hallucinating. The isolation is fracturing his mind. When the power finally flickers back on, and the motor kicks in with a juddering cough, Arthur weeps. He weeps not for redemption, but for relief. He is a slave to a white metal box. Across London, the technology of detection is taking a quantum leap. The cold case review unit is no longer a dusty room with filing cabinets. It is a high-tech hub. DNA profiling has evolved. They can now detect low copy number DNA, minute traces left by a touch, a sneeze, a breath. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah, the same Sarah who flagged the file in '94, is now running the unit. She is tenacious. She remembers the Clara case. It's the one that got away. The lead's car dead and never sat right with her. She orders a full forensic re-examination of the physical evidence. The bag of groceries. The broken eggs are long gone, but the plastic bag was kept, and the vinyl record sleeve found in the garden. It has been sitting in an evidence bag for 17 years. She sends it to the lab. Test it for everything. She orders fingerprints, skin cells, saliva. I want to know who touched this bag besides Clara. The lab technicians go to work. They use lasers. They use chemical reagents. They find a partial print on the handle of the grocery bag. It's faint, degraded by rain and time, but it's there. A thumbprint. They run it through the National Fingerprint Database. The computer churns. Millions of prints. It searches for a match. The screen flashes, and no match found. Sarah slams her hand on the desk. The killer isn't in the system. He has never been arrested. He has never been fingerprinted. He is a clean skin. This confirms her theory. This wasn't a drifter or a career criminal. This was a normal man. A man who goes to work, pays his taxes, and kills on the side. A man who is invisible. But the failure of the fingerprint is not the end. They find something else on the record sleeve. A tiny smear. Biological material. It's mixed with mud and rainwater, but the DNA analysts are wizards. They manage to extract a partial profile. It's male. It's not John, the father. It's the killer. They have his genetic code, but without a name to attach it to. It's just a string of numbers. A ghost in the machine. Sarah decides to try a new tactic. A media appeal, but not Crime Watch this time. She goes for the newspapers. The DNA of a ghost. The headline runs in the Sunday Times. The article explains that they have the killer's DNA. It warns him, "We know who you are. It's only a matter of time. One arrest, one swab, and you are finished." Arthur sees the paper at the newsstand. He buys it. He reads it on a park bench, his hands trembling. He doesn't understand the science fully, but he understands the threat. They have him. Or rather, they have a piece of him. He looks at his thumb. He remembers grabbing the bag. He remembers tearing it from her hand. He didn't wear gloves. No, he did. He wore leather driving gloves. But maybe there was a hole. Maybe he touched it before he put the gloves on. The memory is fuzzy, blurred by adrenaline and time. Doubt is a corrosive acid. It eats away at his confidence. He realizes he can never be arrested. Not for speeding. Not for shoplifting. Not for anything. He must be the perfect citizen. He stops driving his car. It's too risky. He walks everywhere. He becomes even more reclusive. He is a monk of his own making, dedicated to the worship of his own survival. Back on Elmwood Avenue, the party wall war reaches a stalemate. Simon and Julia, exhausted by Arthur's resistance and the legal bills, decide to redesign their extension. They will build a standalone structure, a few feet away from the boundary. They won't dig near his wall. Arthur has won, but it is a Pyrrhic victory. The relationship with the neighbors is toxic. They watch him with suspicion. They tell their friends, "The old guy next door is crazy. He's hiding something." They don't mean a body. They mean money, or hoarding, or just madness. But the seed is planted. The eyes of the street are no longer sympathetic. They are hostile. And then, a new character enters the stage. A young man named Liam. He is a freelance journalist, hungry for a story. He grew up in Ealing. He remembers the Clara case from his childhood. He sees the article about the DNA. He decides to do his own podcast. Podcasts are a new medium, raw and investigative. He starts digging into the old files. He interviews the retired detectives. He interviews the neighbors. He knocks on Arthur's door. Arthur opens it a crack, the chain still on. Go away. Arthur croaks. Mr. Arthur? My name is Liam. I'm doing a documentary on Clara. You were her neighbor. You were the last person to see her alive, essentially. Can I ask you a few questions? I told the police everything. Leave me alone. I just wanted to ask about the car. Liam persists, talking through the crack. The police focused on a blue Ford, but I found a witness statement that mentions a silver Rover. You used to drive a silver Rover, didn't you, sir? Arthur freezes. The blood turns to ice in his veins. A silver Rover. He had sold that car a week after the murder. Scrapped it. Crushed it into a cube of metal. How did this boy know? I don't know what you're talking about. Arthur snaps and slams the door. He leans against it, breathing hard. The journalist knows about the Rover. The police missed it. But this boy, this amateur with a microphone, he has found a thread. Liam stands on the doorstep, staring at the closed door. He doesn't leave. He takes out his phone and records a voice note. Just spoke to the neighbor, Arthur. Incredibly defensive. Shook up when I mentioned the Rover. There's something there. He's hiding something. Liam walks away, but he looks back at the house. He looks at the drawn curtains. He looks at the overgrown garden. He smells a story. And unlike the police, he doesn't need a warrant to ask questions. He just needs an audience. Arthur watches him go. He realizes the net is tightening from all sides. The neighbors, the DNA, the journalist. The world is closing in. He retreats to the living room. He pours himself a brandy. His hands are shaking so much the liquid splashes onto his wrist. He looks at the rug that covers the cellar door. The sanctuary is compromised. He needs a final solution. He cannot move the body. He cannot move himself. He is trapped in the amber of 1985. He starts to formulate a plan for the end. If they come for him, if they knock down that door, they will find nothing but ashes. He looks at the gas fireplace. He looks at the piles of old newspapers he has hoarded. He begins to construct a fail-safe. Not an escape, but an erasure. If he goes down, he takes the house, the cellar, and the secret with him. The nice old man is dead. The cornered rat has taken his place. As night falls over London, the city lights up, a sprawling grid of orange and white. But 46, Elmwood Avenue remains dark, a black tooth in the smiling mouth of the street. Inside, the freezer hums its monotonous tune, and Arthur sits in the dark, clutching a box of matches, waiting for the knock that he knows, with absolute certainty, is coming. The year is 2005. The world has migrated online. Broadband hums through the copper wires of London, carrying information at speeds that make the old police telex machines look like stone tablets. The investigation into Clara's disappearance has left the dusty confines of the filing cabinet and entered the chaotic, unregulated, and relentless arena of the internet. It is the era of the armchair detective. Forums light up at 3 a.m. with theories, maps, and accusations. The podcast created by Liam, titled The Girl in the Garden, drops its first episode on a rainy Tuesday. It doesn't explode immediately. It burns slowly, a fuse lit in the dark, passing from iPod to iPod, from office cooler to dinner table. But soon, the voice of the narrator is whispering in thousands of ears across the capital, retelling the story of the night the fireworks hit a monster. Liam is relentless. He is not bound by police procedure. He is not bound by the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. He names Arthur. He doesn't call him a killer. He's careful with libel laws, but he calls him the Watcher. He paints a picture of the lonely man in the cardigan, the man who is always there, always helpful, always watching. He uploads photos of the street from 1985 alongside photos from today. He highlights the proximity. Look at the distance. Liam's voice urges his listeners. 20 feet. She was snatched 20 feet from his front door. And he heard nothing. He saw nothing. In a street that quiet. The question hangs in the air. echoing in the headphones of commuters on the tube, forcing them to look at their own neighbors with fresh suspicion. Arthur doesn't have the internet. He doesn't have a computer, but the podcast finds him anyway. It seeps in through the walls. He hears it mentioned in the queue at the post office. Have you heard it? The one about the girl in Ealing? They reckon the neighbor did it. Arthur stands there, clutching his pension book, his heart turning to stone in his chest. He feels the eyes on his back. Are they looking at him? Do they know? He hurries home, his head down, the collar of his coat turned up. The anonymity he cherished for 20 years is stripping away, like old paint. He is becoming a celebrity, the worst kind. A villain in a true crime story that hasn't finished writing itself. Inside the police station, Detective Chief Inspector Sarah is furious. The podcast is making the Met look incompetent. It's digging up leads they missed. It's embarrassing the brass. But beneath the anger, there is a grudging respect. Liam has found the loose thread that the police, in their bureaucratic slumber, had ignored. The Silver Rover. Sarah pulls the vehicle registration files from the archives. It's a dusty, tedious job, but she does it herself. She finds the transfer of ownership. Arthur sold a Silver Rover 2000 on November 12, 1985. 1 week after the murder, the buyer was a scrap dealer in Essex who crushed it 2 days later. Why crush a perfectly good car? The Rover 2000 was a solid vehicle, desirable. Why scrap it for pennies unless you needed it gone? Unless the upholstery held a secret? Unless the boot liner was stained with something that wouldn't wash out? Sarah feels the familiar tightening in her gut. The instinct. The pieces are fitting together, not with a click, but with a dull, heavy thud. She looks at the timeline again. The car, the sale, the lie about the TV show. She decides it is time to formalize the suspicion. She calls a meeting with the Crown Prosecution Service. They sit in a sterile, windowless room, the air conditioning humming. She lays out the case. It is circumstantial, entirely circumstantial. No body, no murder weapon, no DNA match on the suspect because they have no sample. Just a missing girl, a lying neighbor, and a scrapped car. It's thin, Sarah, the prosecutor says, rubbing his temples. If you go to a judge for a warrant based on a podcast and a 20-year-old TV schedule, he'll laugh you out of court. You need something physical. You need to place him in that garden. Sarah grinds her teeth. She knows he's right, but she also knows Arthur is the one. She can feel it. She decides to rattle the cage. If she can't kick the door down, she will make the wolf inside panic. She sends a team to Elmwood Avenue. Not a raid, a neighborhood canvass. Uniformed officers knocking on doors, asking about the night of 1985 again, handing out flyers with a new age-progressed photo of Clara. But the target is singular. They park the patrol car right in front of number 46. They stand there, leaning against the bonnet, staring at Arthur's house. It is psychological warfare. Arthur watches them from behind the net curtains. His hands are shaking so badly, he can't hold his tea. They are taunting him. They are waiting for him to make a mistake. He looks at the floorboards. He looks at the rug. The freezer is humming, a constant, nagging reminder of the burden he carries. He starts to talk to himself. A low, muttering monologue. They know nothing. They are fishing. Just stay calm. Stay inside. You are an old man. They don't hurt old men. But the bravado is hollow. He is terrified. He realizes that his plan to burn the house down is his only exit strategy. But he can't do it while they are watching. If he lights a match now, they will break the door down before the flames take hold. He is trapped in a stalemate. Then, the podcast releases a bombshell episode. Episode 6, The Alibi. Liam has done the legwork that the police failed to do in the 90s. He has gone to the BBC archives. He has interviewed the scheduler from 1985. He plays the audio of the interview on the podcast. November 5th, 1985. The archivist says, his voice crisp and authoritative. BBC 2. At 10 p.m., we aired MASH, followed by Newsnight. The Blitz documentary London Burning was scheduled for the 7th, but was actually bumped for Snooker. It didn't air until the following week. The silence on the podcast after that clip is deafening. Then Liam's voice returns, low and accusing. Arthur told police he was watching a documentary that didn't exist. He constructed a memory. He built a lie to cover the hour between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. Why? What was he doing in that hour? We know what happened to Clara in that hour. The episode goes viral. The press picks it up. The tabloids run the headline. The lie that hit a killer. The public mood shifts from curiosity to outrage. People gather outside Arthur's house. Not just neighbors now. Strangers. They stand on the pavement, staring. Someone throws an egg at the window. It splatters against the glass. A yellow weeping eye. Arthur jumps at the sound. He is under siege. The sanctuary has become a fishbowl. Sarah listens to the episode in her car. She smiles, a grim, humorless expression. Liam has done her job for her. The Blitz lie is now public knowledge. It destroys Arthur's credibility. It upgrades him from eccentric witness to prime suspect in the eyes of the law. She goes back to the prosecutor. She slams the file on the desk. He lied about his alibi. He scrapped his car a week later. He matches the profile. I want a search warrant. And I want a dig. The prosecutor looks at the file. He looks at the press clippings. The pressure is on. If they don't act and the press solves it, the police are finished. All right, he says. Get a judge. But you better be right, Sarah. If you dig up an old man's basement and find nothing but coal dust, you'll be directing traffic in Croydon by Monday. Sarah gets the warrant. It is signed at 4 p.m. on a Thursday. Operation Oak is a go. But she decides to wait until dawn. She wants the element of surprise. She wants to catch him sleeping. She wants him disoriented. That night, Arthur senses the shift in the air. The street is too quiet. The gawkers have gone home. The police car has moved. It feels like the calm before a hurricane. He goes to the cellar. He takes the lock off the freezer. He opens the lid. A blast of cold air hits his face, smelling of stale ice and something else. Something faint, sweet, and sickly. The meat is old. The freezer is failing. The temperature warning light is flickering. It is a sign. The machine is giving up. The house is giving up. He reaches into the freezer, moving the bags of frozen peas, the blocks of ice. He touches the bottom, the heavy plastic wrap. He whispers to her, "We're almost done, Clara. Almost done." He closes the lid. He locks it. He goes back upstairs. He doesn't go to bed. He sits in the armchair in the hallway, facing the front door. He places a bottle of brandy on the floor, and beside it, a heavy iron crowbar. He is not going to prison. He has decided. He will not be paraded in handcuffs. He will die in this house. Outside, the surveillance team watches the house through night vision lenses. They see the light go off in the hallway. They report back to Sarah. Target is static. Lights out. Sarah is at the station, briefing the team. Forensics, dogs, ground-penetrating radar, sledgehammers. It is an army. They're going to take the house apart brick by brick, if they have to. The tension in the briefing room is electric. The younger officers are bouncing on the balls of their feet. This is the big one. The legend. The Clara case. Sarah looks at them. "Listen to me," she says, her voice steel. "This man is dangerous. He has lived with a murder for 20 years. He has nothing to lose. Do not underestimate him, and treat the house like a crime scene from the moment you step on the path. Because somewhere in there, Clara is waiting for us." Dawn breaks. Friday. The sky is a bruised purple, bleeding into gray. The convoy of police vans rolls silently down Elmwood Avenue. No sirens, just the crunch of tires on gravel. They stop outside number 46. The doors slide open. Officers in riot gear spill out, moving with practiced fluidity. They flank the house. They cover the back exit. Sarah walks up the path. She doesn't run. She walks with the weight of 20 years of failure on her shoulders. She reaches the front door. She nods to the officer with the enforcer. The heavy red battering ram. He swings it back. Thud. The door shutters. Dust falls from the frame. Thud. The wood splinters. The lock gives way. The door flies open. Police! Stay where you are. The shout echoes through the house. Officers flood the hallway. Flashlights cutting through the gloom. They expect to find Arthur in bed. They expect a confused old man. But the hallway is empty. The armchair is empty. The brandy bottle is there uncorked. The crowbar is gone. Clear left. Clear right. They sweep the ground floor. The kitchen is empty. The living room is empty. The house is silent, holding its breath. Sarah steps into the hallway. She smells it immediately. Gas. Unburnt, pungent gas. Gas, she screams. Everyone out. He's cut the line. The officers scramble, backing out, stumbling over each other. But before they can reach the threshold, a sound comes from the top of the stairs. A scrape. A spark. Arthur stands on the landing. He looks like a wraith. He is wearing his best suit, the one from the 80s. He holds the crowbar in one hand and a lit flare in the other. His eyes are dead. There is no fear in them. Only a terrible, blank resolve. Get out of my house, he whispers. Sarah freezes. She is 10 feet away. She can smell the gas thick in her throat. One spark, and the whole street goes. Arthur, she says, her voice calm, projecting over the panic. Don't do it. We know about the freezer. We know about Clara. It's over. Don't hurt anyone else. Arthur looks at her. He tilts his head. The freezer. He chuckles, a dry, rasping sound. You think she's in the freezer? He shakes his head. She's not in the freezer. She is the house. He raises the flare. The red flame spits and hisses. Sarah draws her weapon. She has a split second, a choice that will haunt her forever. If she shoots, the muzzle flash might ignite the gas. If she doesn't, he drops the flare. Arthur, put it down. He smiles. A sad, tired smile. I'm tired, detective. I'm so tired of watching. He opens his hand. The flare falls. It tumbles through the air in slow motion. A burning star descending into the explosive atmosphere of the hallway. Sarah dives. Not for the flare. It's too far away. She dives for the door, tackling the nearest officer out onto the porch. The world turns white. The explosion is not a bang. It is a shove. A giant, invisible hand that punches the facade of the house outward. The windows blow out in a shower of diamond shards. The roof lifts, just for a second, before collapsing inward. A ball of orange fire rolls out of the front door, licking the paint off the police vans. Silence follows the roar. A ringing silence. Dust clouds billow into the morning air, choking the street. Sarah coughs, dragging herself up from the gravel. She is covered in debris, her ears ringing. She looks at the house. The front is gone. The upper floor has collapsed into the ground floor. Flames are already licking at the curtains of the ruins. Fire brigade! She screams into her radio. Get them here now. But as she stares at the burning wreckage, a sinking feeling settles in her stomach. He did it. The bastard did it. He destroyed the evidence. He cremated himself and the secret. The fire is roaring now, consuming the timber, the history, the lies. The neighbors are screaming. The sirens are wailing. But Sarah just stands there, watching the smoke rise, realizing that the game isn't over. It has just changed. Because fire destroys wood and paper. It destroys flesh. But it doesn't destroy concrete. And it doesn't destroy the truth buried beneath the earth. The firefighters arrive, jets of water arcing into the inferno. Steam hisses, mixing with the smoke. It takes 3 hours to control the blaze. The sun is high in the sky when the smoke finally clears, revealing the skeleton of number 46. It is a blackened, charred husk. The roof is in the basement. The walls are precarious, jagged teeth. The search for bodies begins. It is dangerous work. The structure is unstable. But they find him. They find Arthur. Or what's left of him. He is found near the front door, buried under a pile of bricks. The coroner will have to use dental records. The watchman has watched his last sunrise. But Sarah doesn't care about Arthur. She cares about the cellar. The explosion caused the ground floor to collapse into the basement, filling it with tons of rubble. It will take weeks to excavate, weeks of sifting through ash and burnt timber. We dig, she orders. We clear every brick. We find the cellar floor, and we see what he was hiding. The media circus arrives. The street is cordoned off. House of Horrors explodes. The headlines are already written. The story has an ending. The killer is dead. But for Sarah, the question marks still hang in the air like the smell of smoke. She is the house, he had said. What did that mean? The excavation begins. Heavy machinery is brought in. Cranes lift the charred beams. Men with shovels work in shifts. They clear the debris. They find the freezer. It is smashed, twisted metal. They pry it open. It is empty. Just bags of rotten, thawed peas. No body. No clothes. No Clara. Sarah stares at the empty metal box. He lied again, even at the end. Or maybe he was telling the truth. She is the house. She looks at the floor. The concrete floor of the cellar, now exposed to the sunlight for the first time in decades. It is cracked by the explosion, and through the cracks, something is visible. Not dirt, but another layer. A void. Get the jackhammers, Sarah whispers. Break the floor. The jackhammers roar. The concrete shatters. They peel back the layer Arthur poured in 1987, and beneath it, they find the original floor. And in the corner, a patch of earth that looks different, softer, darker. Sarah kneels down. She uses a trowel. She scrapes away the dirt. She hits something hard. Not bone. Vinyl. She brushes the dirt away. It is a record. A warped, melted, cracked vinyl record. The one he kept. The trophy. And beneath the record, wrapped in layers of heavy industrial plastic, rests the truth. The excavation stops. The silence returns. The forensic anthropologist climbs down into the pit. He works slowly. He nods to Sarah. It's human, he says softly. Female. Young. Sarah closes her eyes. She lets out a breath she feels she has been holding for 20 years. They found her. The fire didn't take her. The concrete protected her. Arthur tried to burn the world down to hide his sin, but the earth held onto it. Call Margaret, Sarah says, her voice cracking. Then she remembers. Margaret is dead. John is dead. There is no one to call. Call the press. She corrects herself, opening her eyes. Tell them Clara is coming home. The final chapter of the mystery is written in the dust of Elmwood Avenue. The monster is dead. The girl is found. But as the body bag is lifted out of the ruin, carried past the silent, weeping neighbors, the tragedy of the lost years hangs heavy over the street. Justice has been done, but it is a cold, hard justice, excavated from the ashes of a life that was stolen and a neighborhood that looked the other way. The case is closed, but the scar on the street, the empty space where number 46 stood, will remain forever. A gap in the row of houses like a missing tooth, a permanent reminder of the monster who lived next door. The smoke has cleared, but the smell remains. It is a heavy, cloying scent, wet ash, burnt plastic, and the metallic tang of waterlogged brickwork that hangs over Elmwood Avenue like a shroud. The fire trucks have departed, leaving behind a scarred, blackened landscape where number 46 once stood. Now, the street belongs to a different kind of procession. The men in white hazmat suits, the forensic archaeologists, the guardians of the dead. They move with a slow, reverence-filled precision, picking their way through the skeleton of the house. The blue tent, erected over the gaping wound in the cellar floor, is the focal point of the entire world. News helicopters chop the air overhead, their cameras zooming in on that square of blue canvas, broadcasting the grim theater of recovery to millions of screens. Under the tent, the atmosphere is monastic. The noise of the city is muffled. There is only the scrape of trowels and the whisper of brushes. They are lifting her out. It is a delicate operation. The body, wrapped in industrial plastic and preserved by the cool, dry tomb of the concrete, is fragile. The layers of wrapping are peeled back just enough to confirm the integrity of the remains. She is small, so impossibly small. It is the first thing that strikes the seasoned crime scene manager. In the collective memory of the public, Clara was a woman, a student, a nurse, an adult. But looking at the bundle in the earth, she looks like a child. The years have stripped away the context, leaving only the tragic geometry of bone and the heartbreaking preservation of a wool coat, the fabric still holding the color of a 1985 autumn. They lift her onto the gurney. The movement is fluid, practiced. The body bag is zipped shut. The sound of the zipper is the loudest thing in the neighborhood. It is the sound of a book closing. As the gurney is wheeled out of the ruins, emerging from the blackened doorway into the harsh sunlight, a silence descends on the street that is absolute. The press pack, usually a baying mob of shouts and flashes, falls quiet. The neighbors, watching from behind the police cordon, stop whispering. Some cross themselves. Others just weep, their hands covering their mouths, eyes wide with the horror of recognition. This is not a story anymore. This is not a podcast. This is a girl who walked this pavement, bought milk at the corner shop, and then spent 2 decades sleeping beneath the feet of her killer. Sarah walks beside the gurney. Her face is smeared with soot, her eyes red-rimmed from smoke and exhaustion. She places a hand on the plastic sheeting as they load it into the private ambulance. It is a gesture of apology. We were too late, she thinks. We were 20 years too late. But at least she is leaving. At least she is no longer the prisoner of number 46. As the doors of the ambulance slam shut, Sarah feels a shift in the air. The tension of the siege is gone, replaced by a heavy, suffocating grief. But beneath the grief, the anger is already beginning to boil. The convoy moves off, a somber parade of flashing lights. The destination is the West London mortuary. There, under the glare of surgical lights, the final truths will be extracted. The autopsy is scheduled immediately. The pathologist, Dr. Eris, is a man who has seen the worst of humanity, but even he is quiet as he prepares. The preservation is remarkable, he notes. The concrete acted as a sealed capsule, protecting the body from the elements, from scavengers, from the ravages of typical decomposition. It is a wet mummy situation. The skin is leathery, the features distorted, but recognizable. He begins the examination. He peels away the layers of clothing, the coat, the sweater, the jeans. He catalogs everything. In the pocket of the coat, he finds a bus ticket. November 5th, 1985. A receipt for the vinyl record. A packet of chewing gum. These mundane artifacts are heartbreaking. They are the contents of a life interrupted in mid-stride. He places them in evidence bags, labeling them with a Sharpie. The scratching of the pen is the only sound in the tiled room. Then he looks at the body. He looks for the cause of death. There are no gunshot wounds, no stab marks. The hyoid bone in the neck is fractured, snapped clean, strangled, but it wasn't manual strangulation. The ligature mark is thin, uniform. A cord, a wire, or perhaps a washing line. The violence was intimate, close range. He looks at her hands. The fingernails are broken. Debris is wedged under them. Not dirt from the grave, but fibers. Blue wool fibers. She fought. She clawed at her attacker. She clawed at his cardigan. Dr. Eris leans in closer. He finds something else. On her wrist, there is a bruising pattern. Distinct. Uniform. Handcuffs. No. Rope. She was tied up. The bruising suggests she was bound while she was still alive. The realization chills the room. This wasn't a snatch and kill. This wasn't a panic murder in the hallway. She was taken. She was held. For how long? The pathology can't give a precise timeline in minutes, but the lack of dehydration signs suggests she died relatively quickly after the abduction. Perhaps hours. But those hours in the house next door, while her mother was calling her name just feet away. The horror of it is almost impossible to contemplate. Back at the station, the mood is not celebratory. There are no high fives. The team is going through the debris, recovered from the house. The fire destroyed much of the upper floor, but the ground floor and the cellar acted as a firebreak for certain items. They are sifting through the charred remains of Arthur's life, looking for the why. They find boxes of newspapers. Thousands of them. Stacks that survived the flames, singed at the edges. They are all organized by date. They are all highlighting crime stories. Not just Clara's. Dozens of them. Missing girls. Murders. Rapes. Arthur was a connoisseur of misery. He collected tragedies like stamps. And then a discovery. In a metal cash box found under the floorboards of the hallway. The spot where Arthur had sat with the flare. They find a diary. It is heat damaged. The cover melted. The pages fused together. The lab technicians go to work, steaming the pages open, using UV light to read the faded ink. It is a chronicle of a madman, but not a chaotic one. A boring one. The entries are mundane. November 4th, rained all day. Fixed the gutter. Saw the girl from next door. She has a new coat. November 5th, too much noise. Fireworks. The dog across the street won't shut up. Opportunity presented itself. November 6th, quiet today. Margaret came over. Nice woman. Sad. The banality of evil is laid bare on the scorched paper. Opportunity presented itself. 3 words to describe the destruction of a universe. There is no manifesto. No grand reason. Just a predator seeing prey and taking it because he could. Because the noise of the fireworks gave him cover. Because the gate was open. It is terrifying in its simplicity. It strips away the myth of the genius killer and reveals a pathetic, opportunistic parasite. Outside, the media storm is intensifying. The House of Horrors narrative is dominating the news cycle. Satellite trucks line the streets of Ealing. Reporters are interviewing everyone. The postman. The milkman. The new neighbors, Simon and Julia. Simon is pale, shaking as he speaks to a BBC reporter. We fought him, he stammers. We fought him over a wall. We took him to court. We thought he was just a grumpy old man. We had no idea. My God. We were sleeping 10 feet away from her. The interview goes viral. It captures the collective guilt of the nation. How many other monsters are living next door? How many other secrets are buried in the gardens of suburbia? The case triggers a wave of anxiety. Police forces across the country report a spike in calls about suspicious neighbors. Arthur has inadvertently become the poster boy for urban paranoia. But the anger is turning towards the police. The Leeds car fiasco is dragged back into the light. The press gets hold of the old files. They publish the timeline. They show how the police chased a blue Ford Escort for 3 months, while the killer sat in his kitchen drinking tea with the victim's mother. Blunder. The headlines scream. Betrayal. Sarah, despite being the one who cracked the case, finds herself in the crosshairs. She is the face of the force that failed. She has to stand in front of the cameras and apologize for the sins of her predecessors. We missed him, she admits, her voice steady but strained at the press conference. We missed him in 1985. We missed him in 1987. We missed him in 1995. The system failed Clara. We cannot undo that. We can only ensure that the person responsible has been identified and that he can no longer hurt anyone. A journalist shouts from the back. But he's dead. He got away with it. He lived a full life. Sarah looks at the camera. He didn't live a full life, she says coldly. He lived a half-life. He lived in a prison of his own making. He was a coward who died scared. That is not getting away with it. That is a 20-year sentence served in a hallway. It is a good soundbite, but it doesn't wash away the bitterness. The public wants a trial. They want to see him in the dock. They want to see him suffer. Denied that. They turn their rage on his legacy. The house. The local council holds an emergency meeting. The shell of number 46 is structurally unsound. But more than that, it is a scar. A monument to depravity. The community wants it gone. They want it erased. Demolish it. The petition says. Burn it to the ground and salt the earth. But the police need the site. It is still a crime scene. They need to sift every handful of dirt. They are looking for others. That is the dark whisper that starts to circulate. Arthur had a diary full of missing girls. Was Clara the only one? Or was the cellar a mass grave? The excavation expands. They dig up the entire garden. They dig up the patio. They bring in cadaver dogs from all over Europe. The neighbors watch from their windows, terrified of what might come up next. Every bone found, usually a chicken bone or a buried pet, stops hearts. But as the days turn into weeks, the result is consistent. Nothing. Just Clara. She was the singular obsession. The only trophy. This somehow makes it worse. It makes the tragedy so focused, so personal. He didn't kill for compulsion to kill many. He killed her because he wanted her. In the midst of this, a figure emerges from the shadows of the past. Clara's younger brother, Michael. He was only 10 when she disappeared. He was the boy left behind in the fractured house. He has stayed out of the public eye, living quietly in Scotland. But now he comes down. He has to identify the personal effects. He sits in Sarah's office, a man of 30, looking at the plastic bag containing the cracked final record. He picks it up, tears running down his face. "She bought this for me," he whispers. "It wasn't for her. It was my birthday present. I asked for it. If I hadn't asked for it, she wouldn't have gone to Soho. She wouldn't have been late." Sarah feels her heart break. The ripple effect of the crime. The guilt transfer. "Michael," she says softly. "No. You cannot think like that. The monster is the only one to blame. Not the bus. Not the record. Not you." He nods, but the guilt is deep. It has had 20 years to set like concrete. He looks at Sarah. "I want to see him," he says. "I know he's dead, but I want to see him. He's in the morgue, Michael. It's not a pleasant sight. I don't care. I need to know he's gone. I need to see the face of the man who stole my sister." Sarah arranges it. It is against protocol, strictly speaking, but she owes this family everything. She takes him to the morgue. They pull back the sheet on a different gurney. Arthur's body is crushed, burned, broken. He looks small, pathetic. Michael stares at him for a long time. He doesn't scream. He doesn't spit. He just stares. He looks like nothing. Michael says finally. "He just looks like an old man." "That's all he was," Sarah says. "A wicked old man." Michael turns away. "Burn him," he says. "Don't bury him. Don't give him a spot in the earth. Put him in the furnace and throw the ash in the bin." It is the only sentence passed on Arthur. The sentence of oblivion. As the weeks pass, the forensic team finishes with the house. They have stripped it to the bedrock. The why is still elusive in its complexity, but the how is documented in excruciating detail. They found the receipts for the cement. They found the receipts for the freezer. They mapped the timeline of his deception. It reveals a man who was constantly working, constantly improvising to keep his secret. It was a full-time job, but one piece of evidence stands out. A series of letters found at Arthur's bedside table. the only piece of furniture that survived relatively intact in the blast zone. They are letters from Margaret, the mother, letters she wrote to him, thanking him for his support, thanking him for the tea, thanking him for being a rock. He kept them. He kept them next to his bed, not out of guilt, but out of pride. They were his accolades, proof of his superior intellect, proof that he had fooled them all. Sarah reads them and feels a nausea so strong she has to leave the room. This is the true horror. Not the body in the basement, but the friendship in the living room. The betrayal of trust so profound it defies definition. The press moves on. The satellite trucks leave. Ealing tries to return to normal. But it can't. The tourists still come. They take selfies in front of the ruins. Murder tourism. It is a sickness. Simon and Julia put their house on the market. They can't live there. No one can live next to the void. The price crashes. The street is tainted. Sarah sits in her office. The case file finally marked closed. But she can't close it in her mind. There is a loose end. A nagging feeling. The podcast host, Liam, sends her an email. Subject: the other car. Message: I know the Rover was scrapped, but I found something else. A witness from the garage in 1985. He says Arthur didn't scrap the car because it was dirty. He scrapped it because the boot lock was broken. From the inside. Sarah stares at the screen. The boot lock broke in from the inside. Clara was in the car. She wasn't killed in the house immediately. He put her in the car. He drove her somewhere. Or did he just keep her in there? The timeline shifts. The horror expands. If the lock was broken from the inside, she was conscious. She was fighting. She was trying to get out. Sarah realizes the investigation isn't over. The narrative they built, the quick death, the immediate burial, might be wrong. Arthur's diary said. Opportunity presented itself. But the broken lock suggests a struggle that went beyond the hallway. It suggests a journey. And if there was a journey, where did they go? And why did he bring her back? She picks up the phone. She calls the forensics lab. The car, she says. The scrapped Rover. I know it's a cube of metal somewhere. But find out where. Find out if it still exists. I want to know what happened in that boot. The case is closed, but the ghosts are still talking. And Sarah is the only one listening. The excavation of the earth is done, but the excavation of the truth has hit a new, harder layer. The official file on Clara's murder is a heavy, black-bound volume sitting on the corner of Detective Chief Inspector Sarah's desk. It is stamped closed. To the Metropolitan Police, to the press, and to the exhausted public, the story is over. The monster has been identified, the body recovered, and the site of the atrocity razed to the ground. Justice, in its crudest, most medieval form, has been served by the fire that consumed Arthur. But for Sarah, the stamp on the file is a lie. A case is not a straight line from crime to punishment. It is a web, and while the spider is dead, the sticky, invisible threads of his actions are still vibrating in the dark. The email from Liam, the podcaster, sits open on her computer screen, like a digital accusation. The boot lock was broken from the inside. It is a sentence that changes the entire physics of the night of November 5th, 1985. The accepted narrative, the one Sarah told the press, was one of swift, brutal finality. Dragged into the alley, strangled, buried, a matter of minutes, a crime of proximity. But if the Rover is involved, if Clara was in the boot, then the timeline bleeds outward. The crime scene was not just a house. It was a moving vehicle. It was a journey. Sarah drives to Essex. She needs to speak to the source, not the scrap dealer. He's long dead, but the mechanic Liam found. A man named Jack, now in his late 70s, living in a static caravan on the coast. It is a gray, blustery day, the wind whipping the sea into a brown froth. Jack is suspicious of police. He sits in his small, smoke-filled living room, wheezing, clutching a mug of tea. He remembers the car, not because it was a Rover, but because of the man who brought it in. He was fussy, Jack says. his voice a gravelly rasp. Most people scrapping a car, they just want the cash. They don't care. This bloke, this Arthur, he watched us. He stood right by the crusher. He wanted to see it flat. He didn't leave until it was a cube. Sarah leans forward. And the lock, Jack? You told the reporter about the lock. Jack nods. I had to strip the plates and check the boot for valuables before we crushed it. Standard procedure. I opened the boot. The catch was mangled, bent backwards. And the paint, the inside of the lid was scratched to hell. Gouges. Deep ones. Like someone had taken a screwdriver to it. Or, he trails off, looking out the window at the rain. Or fingernails? Sarah suggests, the word heavy in the small room. It looked like a panic. Jack says softly, that's what it looked like. Panic in the metal. Sarah leaves the caravan with a cold stone in her stomach. The image of the scratched paint is visceral. It paints a horrific picture of Clara, alive, trapped in the darkness of the boot, clawing at the steel while the car moved beneath her. She wasn't dead when she left Elmwood Avenue. She was fighting. And Arthur was driving. But driving where? Back at the station. Sarah dives into the archives again. She needs the MOT records. The Ministry of Transport tests are mandatory. They record the mileage of a vehicle every year. If Arthur was the meticulous man the diary suggests, he would have kept his car legal. She finds the microfiche. It takes hours of scrolling through the blurry, backlit images. Finally, she finds it. Rover 2000. Registration B784 KLP. MOT dated August 1985. 42,100 miles. The scrap transfer document, dated November 12, 1985, records the mileage at the time of destruction. 42,450 miles. Sarah does the math. 350 miles in 3 months. That's average for a retiree. But then she looks closer. She checks the service record from a local garage in Ealing, dated November 1st, just 4 days before the murder. Arthur had the oil changed. The mileage recorded by the mechanic on November 1st was 42,386. She freezes. November 1st, 42,386. November 12th, 42,450. The difference is 64 miles. 64 miles driven in the week Clara disappeared. Arthur was a creature of habit. He walked to the shops. He drove to the church on Sundays, a 2-mile round trip. He didn't go on road trips. He didn't have friends in the country. 64 miles is an anomaly. It is a massive, unexplained spike in his data. Sarah pulls out a map of London and the home counties. She takes a compass. She sets the scale. 32 miles out. 32 miles back. She places the pin on Ealing. She draws the circle. The line cuts through the suburbs, out into the darkness of the countryside. It hits the Chiltern Hills. It hits the dense woods of Buckinghamshire. It hits the gravel pits of the Thames Valley. He took her out. Sarah whispers to the empty office. He took her for a drive. The theory forms rapidly in her mind. It fits the psychology of the opportunity entry in the diary. He snatched her. He panicked. He didn't have a plan for a body. He threw her in the boot. He drove. He drove to find a place to dump her. A classic disposal run. But something went wrong. Why bring her back? Why bring a body back to the one place in the world that connects him to the crime? It defies the logic of self-preservation. Unless he couldn't bury her. Unless the ground was frozen. No, it was November, cold but not frozen hard. Unless he was disturbed. Unless he realized, out there in the dark, that he didn't want to let her go. This is the darker turn. The transition from killer to collector. Perhaps the drive wasn't a disposal run. Perhaps it was a test. Or perhaps he reached the woods, opened the boot, and found her still alive, still fighting. And in the ensuing struggle, he realized he couldn't leave her there. He needed to contain her. He needed to bring her into his domain. Sarah realizes she needs to narrow down the 64 miles. She needs a destination. She goes back to the diary, the mundane entries. She looks for anything related to locations. July 1982. Picnic at Black Park. Nice lake. September 1983. Drive to Burnham Beaches. Autumn colors good. He knew the woods. He knew the isolated spots west of London. She focuses on Black Park. It falls perfectly within the radius. 30 miles from Ealing. A straight shot down the M4 and the A412. It's a dense forest, popular with walkers by day, pitch black by night. Sarah decides to drive the route. She wants to see what he saw. She waits until nightfall. 10 p.m., the same time Clara was taken. She gets in her car. She resets the trip computer. She drives from the site of number 46, turning onto the North Circular, then the M4 westbound. She drives at a steady 50 miles per hour. The streetlights flash by, rhythmic and hypnotic. She imagines Arthur in the Rover, the heater on, the radio playing quietly. Maybe the classical station he loved. And in the boot, the muffled thumps of a girl fighting for her life. Did he turn the radio up to drown her out? Did he talk to her through the rear seats? She exits the motorway. The roads get darker, narrower. The trees close in, forming a tunnel of branches. She reaches Black Park. The entrance is gated at night, but there are laybys. Dark, secluded patches of gravel. She pulls into one. She checks the odometer. 31 miles. It matches. She kills the engine. The silence of the woods is heavy. An owl hoots. The wind rustles the pine needles. It is the perfect place to hide a secret. Sarah steps out of the car. She walks to the edge of the trees. The ground is soft, covered in leaf litter. Easy to dig. Why didn't he do it? She shines her flashlight into the darkness. And then, she understands. It's not about the ground. It's about the fear. In 1985, Black Park was a known cruising ground. A place where men met at night. A place where police patrols were frequent to crack down on illicit activity. Arthur, the prude, the respectable man, would have pulled up here and seen headlights. He would have seen shadows moving. He would have been terrified of being seen, not just as a killer, but as a deviant in a car park notorious for deviancy. He panicked. He couldn't dump her here. Too many eyes. Too much risk. So he turned around. He drove back. Sarah gets back in the car. She drives the return leg. The adrenaline of the failure would have been coursing through his veins. He is driving back to London with a hostage in the trunk. The stakes are rising with every mile. He is bringing the evidence back to the crime scene. She arrives back at Elmwood Avenue. The total trip, 63 miles. It fits. The missing mile is the driving around the block, waiting for the street to be empty before he could open his garage door. This narrative reconstruction changes everything. It means Clara was alive for at least 2 hours after the abduction. It means she felt the car stop. She felt the hope that someone would find her. She felt the car start again. And then, the crushing realization that she was returning to the start. Sarah returns to her office, haunted by the lost journey. She feels a need to document this. It won't change the legal outcome, but it changes the historical truth. She writes a supplementary report, the timeline of the rover. She files it, but she knows it's not enough. She needs physical proof that the car was the secondary crime scene. She calls the forensics lab again. The cube, she says. The scrapped rover. You said you couldn't find it. It's been 20 years, Sarah. The technician sighs. Scrap metal gets melted down, recycled. It's probably a washing machine in Beijing by now. Jack the mechanic, Sarah says. He said Arthur watched it get crushed. But he also said something else. He said he stripped the number plates. He kept them. People keep plates. Mechanics do. Souvenirs. Or for cloning. Jack is a hoarder. He lives in a caravan full of junk. If he kept the plates. What good are the plates? The plates were on the car. They would have road grime, pollen, insects from that night. If we can find pollen from Black Park on those plates, pollen that doesn't grow in Ealing, it proves the journey. It is a long shot, a forensic Hail Mary, but Sarah drives back to Essex. She hammers on Jack's caravan door. The plates, Jack. The number plates from the Rover. B784 KLP. Did you keep them? Jack looks at her, blinking. You're persistent, aren't you? Did you keep them? He shuffles to the back of the caravan. He opens a shed in the garden. It is a treasure trove of rusted metal. Hubcaps, steering wheels, and stacks of number plates. A graveyard of automobiles. He digs through a pile. The sound of clattering aluminum fills the air. B7, he mutters. He pulls out a yellow plastic plate. Cracked. Dirty. B784 KLP. Here, he says, handing it to her. Put it on the wall of your office. Sarah handles it with gloves. She bags it. She drives it to the lab like it's a human heart. The palynologist, the pollen expert, is called in. He scrapes the grime from the back of the plate, from the screw holes where the dirt has been impacted and sealed for 20 years. He puts the sample under the microscope. He looks for the signature of the woods. Ealing is urban. Plain trees, grass, pollution. Black Park is ancient woodland. Pine, fern, specific fungi. 2 days later, the report comes back. Sample contains high concentrations of Pinus sylvestris, Scots pine, Antheridium bracken. This profile is inconsistent with an urban London environment. It is consistent with dense coniferous woodland. Sarah stares at the report. It is the lock. It is the proof. He went to the woods. He stood on the precipice of dumping the body, and he turned back. The why becomes clearer. It wasn't just fear of being seen. It was the decision, the pivot point. When he turned the car around, he made the choice to live with the body. He made the choice to build the tomb. The drive to the woods was the act of a panic-stricken man. The drive back was the act of a monster. She decides to tell Michael. He deserves to know the whole story. She meets him in a coffee shop near the station. He looks tired, the grief of the funeral still hanging on him. We found out what happened in the missing hours, she tells him gently. He tried to take her away. He drove her to the woods, but he couldn't go through with it. He brought her back. Michael stares into his coffee. So she was in the car? Yes. And she fought. The mechanic said the lock was damaged. She didn't give up, Michael. Not for a second. She was fighting him until the very end. Michael lifts his head. There is a strange light in his eyes. A fierce pride mixing with the sorrow. She didn't just let it happen, he says. She fought the bastard. She did. She was a warrior. It is a small comfort, but it is real. It reframes Clara not as a passive victim, but as a fighter who lost a battle against overwhelming odds. It gives her agency back. But the revelation of the car journey triggers something else in Sarah's mind. If he drove her to the woods and brought her back, how did he get her from the car to the house without being seen? The diary said opportunity. The garage. Arthur's house had a garage, but it was narrow. The Rover barely fit. To get a body out of the boot, inside the garage, with the door closed, it would have been tight, difficult. Sarah goes back to the site of the ruins. The garage walls are still standing, scorched but upright. She walks into the space. She measures it. If the car was parked nose in, the boot would be near the door. If the door was closed, there is only 2 feet of clearance. She looks at the wall connecting the garage to the house. There is a door, a side door into the hallway. She realizes the logistics of the horror. He drove in. He closed the garage door. The world was shut out. He was alone with her in the concrete box. The struggle in the boot. The noise. It would have been deafening in this enclosed space. And Margaret, sitting next door, watching TV. The garage wall is a shared wall. Sarah touches the blackened bricks. If Clara screamed in the garage, Margaret must have heard it. The soundproofing in these 1930s semis is poor. A scream in the garage sounds like a scream in the kitchen. Sarah feels a chill that has nothing to do with the wind. Margaret said she heard nothing. She swore it. Just the fireworks. But the MOT record puts the mileage on the car. The timeline puts the return journey around 11:30 p.m. or midnight. The fireworks were over by then. The street was silent. Did Margaret hear something? Did she dismiss it? Or did she know? It is a thought so toxic Sarah tries to push it away. Margaret was the grieving mother, the victim. She spent 20 years crying. But Sarah remembers the letters. The letters Arthur kept. The gratitude. The dependency. You are my rock, Arthur. Was it just dependency? Or was it a subconscious pact? Sarah shakes her head. No, that is too far. That is looking for demons where there are only victims. Margaret was duped. The tragedy is that she heard the noise, the thump, the muffled cry, and dismissed it as a car door slamming, or a fox, or the house settling. She rationalized the sound of her daughter's murder because the alternative was unthinkable. The Lost Journey investigation closes the final gap in the timeline. Sarah compiles the final dossier. It is a masterpiece of forensic reconstruction. It details the abduction, the containment in the car, the 63-mile round trip to Black Park, the failure to dispose, the return to the garage, the final struggle, and the burial. It is the anatomy of a failure that became a nightmare. Arthur wasn't a master criminal. He was a man who failed to kill her quietly, failed to dump her secretly, and ended up living on top of his mistake because he ran out of options. As Sarah leaves the office that night, she walks past the evidence locker. The yellow number plate is there, bagged and tagged. B784KLP. It is the silent witness. The only thing that saw the whole story. It saw the fear in the woods. It saw the turn back to London. It saw the final destination. The case is closed. But Sarah knows she will never drive down a country lane at night again without looking at the boot of the car in front, wondering what secrets might be trapped inside, clawing to get out. The city is full of cars, and every car is a potential cage. The horror isn't just in the house next door. It's passing you on the motorway at 70 miles per hour. The physical end of number 46, Elmwood Avenue, does not come with a gavel bang or a judge's decree, but with the hydraulic groan of a 30-ton excavator. It is a gray Tuesday morning, 6 months after the explosion, when the council finally signs the death warrant for the structure. The house has stood as a charred, skeletal monument to depravity long enough. It has become a macabre landmark, a blackened tooth in the smile of the suburbs that draws the wrong kind of pilgrims. The murder tourists still come, standing on the pavement with their digital cameras, trying to capture the aura of evil, pointing at the spot where the freezer stood, speculating about the darkness of the cellar. The neighbors are exhausted. They have petitioned, they have begged, and finally, the machines have arrived to erase the stain. The demolition is a spectacle. The street is closed off. A perimeter fence is erected, wrapped in green mesh to shield the violence of the tear down from the public eye. But the sound cannot be contained. The engine of the excavator roars to life, a diesel beast waking up to consume the home of a monster. The operator, a man in a hard hat who knows nothing of Clara and nothing of Arthur, manipulates the controls with indifferent precision. The giant yellow claw reaches up, hovering for a second over the roofless, burnout shell, and then descends. It strikes the chimney first. The brickwork, weakened by the fire, crumbles like dry cake. A cloud of soot and mortar dust puffs into the air, drifting across the fence line, coating the parked cars of the neighbors in a fine, gray film. It is the dust of 1985. It is the dust of the secrets kept within those walls. The claw pulls back, dragging a wall with it. The sound is deafening, a chaotic symphony of snapping timber, shattering glass, and the deep, bass thrum of collapsing masonry. Room by room, the house is dissected. The bedroom where Arthur slept, the window where he watched the world, the hallway where he held the flare, It all comes down in a cascade of rubble. Sarah stands at the edge of the cordon, watching. She doesn't need to be here. Her job is done. The file is closed. But there is a need for visual confirmation. She needs to see it gone. She watches as the excavator bucket smashes through the floorboards of the ground level, exposing the cellar one last time. The pit is filled with debris now, choked with the wreckage of the house above it. The tomb is being filled in. The concrete sarcophagus, where Clara lay for 20 years, is crushed, broken into manageable chunks of aggregate, and scooped up into the back of a dump truck. It takes 2 days to clear the site, 2 days to turn a 3-bedroom semi-detached house with a history of horror into a flat, empty patch of brown earth. When the machines finally leave, silence returns to Elmwood Avenue, but it is a different kind of silence. It is the silence of a missing limb. The gap in the terrace is jarring. You can see the side wall of Simon and Julia's house now. The brickwork pale and clean where it was once joined to Arthur's. It looks raw, like fresh skin exposed after a bandage is ripped off. The party wall, that was the source of so much legal conflict, is now an external wall, standing alone against the wind. But while the house is gone, the bureaucracy of the aftermath is just beginning. Sarah is summoned to the Independent Police Complaints Commission inquiry. It is not a trial of Arthur. It is a trial of the system. A panel of suited men and women sits in a sterile, air-conditioned room in central London, tasked with answering the question that screams from the tabloids. Why did it take 20 years? Sarah sits in the witness chair. She is the hero of the hour, the one who solved it. But the atmosphere is adversarial. They dissect the 1985 investigation with the cold, precise scalpel of hindsight. They project the old handwritten logs onto a screen. Detective Chief Inspector. The chairman begins, peering over his glasses. Can you explain why the alibi provided by the suspect in November 1985 was not verified against the television schedules at the time? It was a different era, Sarah answers, keeping her voice level. There were no digital databases. The officers were overworked. They took the word of a man who appeared to be a respectable neighbor. It was a human error. A human error that cost a family 2 decades of torture. The chairman retorts. And the car? The report from the Leeds garage? Why was that not followed up until 2005? The link was tenuous. The car was scrapped. The paper trail was slow. By the time the connection was made, the trail had gone cold. She defends the ghosts of the past, the retired coppers who missed the clues, not because she agrees with their methods, but because she understands the chaos of a murder inquiry. She knows that for every clue that lights up the path, there are 1,000 that lead nowhere. But the inquiry is merciless. They produce the Lost Journey report. They map out the 63 miles. They show how Arthur drove Clara to the woods and brought her back. He was on the road for 2 hours, the council states, driving a car with a hostage in the boot. He passed 3 police stations. He passed 2 patrol cars, according to the logs. And yet, he was invisible. Does this not suggest a systemic failure of patrol protocols in 1985? Sarah listens to the indictment. It is painful. It paints a picture of a police force that was asleep at the wheel. But she knows the truth is simpler and more terrifying. Arthur wasn't invisible because the police were incompetent. He was invisible because he was ordinary. He was a white man in a Rover 2000. He fit the pattern of the background. He was the static in the signal. The inquiry concludes that lessons must be learned. A phrase Sarah has heard 1,000 times. They publish a report. It is 300 pages long. It blames communication breakdowns and antiquated record-keeping. It is a heavy paperweight that changes nothing for the dead. Back in Ealing, the economic fallout of the crime is reshaping the street. Simon and Julia, the neighbors who lived next to the body, finally sell their house. They accept and offer 30% below market value. The stigma damage is real. The buyers are a property development company. They don't care about ghosts. They care about square footage. They plan to renovate, to flip it, to erase the history with white paint and open-plan living. But they have a problem. The empty lot next door, number 46, is owned by the Crown. Arthur died intestate. He had no family. The state seized his assets. The land sits there a void. Weeds begin to reclaim it. Buddleia bushes sprout from the tire tracks left by the dump trucks. It becomes a no-man's land. The children of the neighborhood are warned to stay away. Don't play on the Arthur lot. It takes on the quality of a cursed earth. Urban legends begin to sprout faster than the weeds. The local kids dare each other to run across it at night. They say if you put your ear to the ground, you can hear the freezer humming. It is nonsense, born of fear, but it cements Arthur's place in the folklore of London. He has become the bogeyman. Michael, Clara's brother, travels down from Scotland again. He feels a pull to the place. He needs to see the empty space. He stands on the pavement, looking at the gap. The sun is shining, but he feels cold. He walks onto the dirt. The ground is uneven, churned up by the demolition. He walks to where the front door used to be. He tries to orient himself. Here was the hallway, he thinks. Here was the living room. And here was the garage. He stands on the patch of earth where the garage stood. He closes his eyes. He imagines the car pulling in, the darkness, the terror his sister must have felt. He feels a surge of rage, so pure it makes his hands shake. He wants to scream, to tear the earth apart with his bare hands. But then he sees something. In the mud, half buried, is a piece of tile, a small, blue and white ceramic fragment. He crouches down and picks it up. It's a piece of the kitchen splashback. He remembers it. He remembers sitting in Arthur's kitchen in the 90s, when he came to visit his mother. He remembers Arthur making tea. He remembers staring at those tiles while Arthur talked about hope and prayer. He grips the shard of tile until it cuts his palm. The blood wells up dark and real. The physical pain grounds him. He realizes that the monster wasn't a myth. He was a man who bought tiles, who grouted a wall, who made tea. That is the lesson Michael takes from the rubble. The monster is not under the bed. He is standing in the kitchen. He throws the tile back into the mud. He doesn't want a souvenir. He turns to leave, and he sees a woman watching him from across the street. It is the young woman who Arthur snapped at, the one who saw the mask slip in 1999. She is older now, pushing a pram. She crosses the road. "You're her brother, aren't you?" she asks softly. Michael nods. "Yes." "I'm sorry," she says. "I lived opposite him for 5 years. I used to wave at him. I feel sick every time I think about it. We let him live here. We let him be part of us." "You didn't know," Michael says, absolving her. "Nobody knew. But we should have looked," she insists, her voice trembling. "We should have seen something. The curtains were always drawn. He never had visitors. We just thought he was sad. We never thought he was bad." This is the collective trauma of Elmwood Avenue, the guilt of the bystander, the realization that their tolerance for the eccentric neighbor was the very thing that allowed a killer to hide in plain sight. They normalized his behavior because the alternative, that a predator was living among them, was too uncomfortable to entertain. The police hold an auction of Arthur's remaining effects, items that were not evidence, just property. The proceeds go to the state. It is a grim affair. Dealers in murderabilia circle like vultures. They want his armchair. They want his lamps. They want the mundane objects that brushed against the life of a killer. Sarah tries to stop it. She argues it is in poor taste. But the law is the law. The assets must be liquidated. She hears that a collector in America bought the garden gnome that stood near the spot where Clara was snatched. He paid $2,000 for it. The banality of the transaction makes her stomach turn. It proves that the fascination with evil is a market force, a commodity that can be traded. Arthur is dead, but he is generating revenue. He is still consuming attention. Sarah decides to visit the grave, not Arthur's. His ashes were disposed of in an unmarked location, unmourned and unremembered. She visits Clara's grave. It is in a quiet cemetery in West London, under a cherry tree. The headstone is new, gleaming white marble. Clara, 1966 to 1985. Found 2005. Beloved daughter and sister. The gap in the dates, 1985 to 2005, is a chasm of lost time. Sarah places a bunch of daffodils on the grass. The same flowers Margaret used to plant. She stands there for a long time. She talks to the stone. "We got the truth, Clara," she whispers. "It took too long, but we got it. You aren't a number anymore." But as she walks back to her car, her phone buzzes. It is the office. A new cold case has been flagged. A girl missing from 1992 in South London. The DNA technology has found a potential link to a known offender. The cycle is starting again. The wheel turns. Sarah realizes she can never truly leave the dead. She is a conduit for their voices. She drives away, leaving Clara to rest. But the story of Elmwood Avenue isn't quite finished, because back at the station, a junior officer is cataloging the last box of Arthur's papers, the ones that were deemed irrelevant to the Clara investigation. Receipts, bills, old letters. The officer picks up a receipt from a hardware store in Birmingham, dated 1978, 7 years before Clara. It is for bags of quicklime and a spade. Birmingham. Arthur had family in Birmingham, an aunt who died in 1979. He inherited her house. He sold it in 1980. The officer frowns. Quicklime. Spade. 1978. He types "missing women Birmingham 1978" into the database. The screen flickers. A name pops up. Elizabeth. Age 22. Last seen walking home from a bus stop in Edgbaston. November 1978. Never found. The officer feels a cold prickle on the back of his neck. He looks at the receipt again. He looks at the name Arthur, signed at the bottom in fading blue ink. The why of Clara's murder was opportunity, but opportunity implies a readiness to act, a familiarity with the process. The officer picks up the phone. He dials Sarah's number. "Boss," he says, his voice dry. "I think you need to come back. I think he did it before." The demolition of the house destroyed the scene of Clara's death, but it didn't destroy the history of the man. The rubble has been cleared, but the foundation of Arthur's life is built on something deeper, darker, and older than anyone suspected. The nightmare of Elmwood Avenue was just the final chapter. The prequel is buried 100 miles away, under another patio, in another city, waiting for the shovel to hit the earth. The monster didn't just live next door. He traveled, and the silence he left behind is not unique to London. It echoes across the motorway network, a trail of quiet disappearances that are only now, with the receipt in the officer's hand, beginning to scream. The receipt is a scrap of paper no larger than a cigarette pack, yellowed by time and singed at the edges by the heat of the Ealing fire. It should have burned. It should have been ash floating in the wind, like the rest of Arthur's secrets. But it survived, tucked inside a heavy leather ledger, insulated by the density of 50 years of financial paranoia. The junior officer holds it with tweezers, the plastic evidence bag crinkling under the fluorescent lights. Harding's Hardware, Birmingham, October 14th, 1978. 1 spade. For bags of agricultural lime. Sarah looks at the date. October 1978. 7 years before Clara. 7 years before the fireworks. She looks at the items. A spade is a tool. Lime is a chemical. It is used by gardeners to balance soil acidity. It is used by builders to make mortar. And in the dark folklore of murder, it is used by killers who believe, often erroneously, that it will dissolve a body and erase the evidence of their sin. Arthur was a mechanic, not a chemist. He bought the myth, and in doing so, he left a receipt that acts as a confession signed in ink. Sarah feels the floor of the investigation drop away. The opportunity theory, the idea that Arthur was a dormant volcano that erupted just once because a girl walked past his open gate, is dead. Volcanoes rumble before they blow. They have a history. She drives north. The M40 motorway stretches out before her. A ribbon of gray asphalt cutting through the heart of England. She is leaving her jurisdiction. She is leaving the familiar streets of London for the industrial sprawl of the West Midlands. The windshield wipers beat a frantic rhythm against the rain. A metronome ticking down to another horror show. Birmingham is a different beast to London. It is a city of canals and red brick, of factories and hard edges. Sarah meets with the West Midlands Serious Crime Squad in a station that smells of damp wool and floor polish. Detective Chief Inspector Miller is a man carved from granite, skeptical and tired. He looks at the receipts Sarah places on his desk. He looks at the file on Elizabeth, the missing girl from 1978. It's a long shot, Sarah. Miller grunts, leaning back in his chair. A spade and some lime? He could have been gardening. His aunt had a big garden, didn't she? He lived in London. Sarah counters, her voice sharp. He came up here to settle her affairs. He was here for 3 weeks. Elizabeth vanished in that window. She was last seen half a mile from the aunt's house. And the lime? Who buys quicklime to tidy up a garden before selling a house? Miller rubs his face. He knows she's right, but the politics of digging are heavy. The house is owned by a family now. The Patels. They've been there for 15 years. They've got 3 kids. You want me to knock on their door and tell them their patio might be a roof for a corpse? I want you to tell them the truth, Sarah says. That a monster owned their house before them, and that Elizabeth needs to come home. The warrant is granted, not easily, but the DNA link from the Ealing case carries weight. Arthur is a proven killer. The benefit of the doubt no longer exists for him. The convoy moves out to Edgbaston. It is a leafy, affluent suburb, similar to Ealing. The streets are lined with Victorian terraces, large houses with high hedges. Arthur liked these areas. He liked the respectability. He liked the camouflage of the middle class. They pull up to the house. It is beautiful. Red brick, white sash windows. A tricycle on the driveway. The contrast between the domestic innocence of the tricycle and the grim purpose of the police vans is jarring. Sarah walks to the door. She knocks. A woman answers, wiping her hands on a tea towel. She smiles, confused. Mrs. Patel? Sarah asks, flashing her warrant card. I'm DCI Sarah Thorne. We need to talk about the history of your property. The conversation is devastating. It always is. The color drains from Mrs. Patel's face. Her husband comes to the door, protective, angry, then terrified. They listen to the story of Arthur. They listen to the theory of the lime. They look at their garden, their sanctuary, where their children play, and they see it transform into a crime scene before their eyes. Do what you have to do, Mr. Patel whispers, holding his wife. Just get it out. If there is something there, get it out. The team moves in. The garden is long and narrow, backing onto a disused railway line. At the far end, there is a patio. Crazy paving. The stones are old, uneven, moss-covered. They look like they haven't been touched since the 70s. This is it, Sarah says, standing on the stones. He likes to seal things. He likes layers. The ground-penetrating radar is brought in. The operator runs the machine over the uneven stones. The screen shows a disturbance. A density anomaly about 3 feet down. It's rectangular. We have a target. The operator confirms. The breaking of the ground begins. It is a replay of Ealing, but without the fire. The sound of sledgehammers on stone echoes off the neighboring houses. The neighbors come out to watch, faces pressed against windows. The grim curiosity of the suburbs ignited once again. They lift the paving slabs. Underneath is a layer of sand. And under the sand, the soil is dark, compacted. They start to dig. The soil is heavy clay. It clings to the spades. Sarah watches from the edge of the pit. She is looking for the white streak. The lime. 2 feet down. Nothing. 3 feet down. The shovel hits something. Not bone. Plastic. A heavy-duty fertilizer bag. The digging stops. The forensic archaeologist climbs in. He uses a trowel to brush away the dirt. The bag is wrapped tightly, bound with wire. It is identical to the method used on Clara. The wire, the wrapping, the containment. Arthur didn't invent his method in 1985. He perfected it in 1978. They cut the wire. They peel back the plastic. A plume of white dust puffs out. The lime. Sarah holds her breath. Lime can do two things. It can destroy, or it can preserve, depending on the moisture content. In the damp clay of Birmingham, the lime has formed a hard, chalky crust around the remains. It has acted like a plaster cast. They find her, Elizabeth. She is there, curled into the fetal position. The lime has eaten away the soft tissue, leaving a stark, white skeleton encased in the chemical tomb. But the hair is still there. Long, dark hair, preserved by the plastic. And the jewelry, a gold locket. Sarah nods to the team. It's her. She walks away from the pit, her stomach churning. It wasn't just a receipt. It was a map. And the terrifying question explodes in her mind. How many receipts did he burn? Arthur was 45 years old when he killed Clara. He was 38 when he killed Elizabeth. What did he do when he was 30? When he was 25? The timeline of his life is a dark continent, and they have only explored the coastline. The news breaks. Second body found. The media, which had just started to pack up in London, descends on Birmingham. The narrative shifts. Arthur is no longer the killer next door.